This story begins 20 years after aliens invaded Earth, and now the final day for the planet's total destruction has arrived. Humanity is on its last line of defense, a group of warriors preparing for battle. The leader of this group is the Dragon Emperor Kavna, who says that the only way to end all of this is by defeating the alien commander. We then see a huge group of aliens in front of the warriors, and Kavna orders everyone to give it their all for the sake of humanity. The alien commander behind the army says something in an unknown language, but it doesn't sound good. He utters a few more words in that language and begins to gather energy. He then releases a gigantic energy blast from his mouth, leaving a massive trail of destruction in its path. One of the warriors named Lee Do-hyuk manages to survive the explosion and curses the alien commander. He threatens to attack the leader, but Kavna, who also survived, tells him to stop. The warrior lost his arm during the attack but says he's fine. He tells the other survivors that it would be impossible to stop the aliens with humanity's current strength, but that they still had another option. One of the female warriors pulls out a purple stone and says that this is the time reversal stone, which humanity obtained after 20 years of conflict. Whoever uses the power of this stone can return to the past only once, but it can transport only one person. And without even thinking twice, the group says that the only person among them who can do this is Lee Do-hyuk. They smile and say that geniuses like him aren't born every day, which is why he is the only one they could trust for humanity's future. He accepts the mission and activates the power of the stone while saying that in the next life he will save everyone with a smile on his face. The purple light emanated by the stone passes through the protagonist and then disappears. His body is left with a womb where the light passed through, and he falls into the arms of the warrior, who says he's already gone. The girl says she feels relieved, and Cabinet says that now the boy would have to face all that suffering alone and that their job was done there. But the warrior remembers there's still one little thing they forgot. The alien commander was still there, and at the very least, they had to finish with an honorable fight. They then face the army head-on and say that there's still a long road ahead of them. At last, they charge into battle, and the scene cuts away without showing the result, but we already know what happened to them. We then see the city with a bright blue sky well before the alien attack. Lee Do-hyuk wakes up in his room, still a bit confused, wondering if the stone really worked. He then realizes he returned at the perfect moment since there are still 7 months left before the attack begins. So he decides that he will train his body and gather more supplies until the day of the invasion. He grabs his jacket and gets ready to leave while remembering that he holds the fate of all humanity in his hands. On the way, he decides he needs to awaken before the first invasion and make his body as perfect as possible before the awakening. However, the story cuts to 7 months later, and Do-hyuk goes to the place he remembers being the location of the first portal the aliens used to invade. Although he seems stronger, he complains that his body still hasn't reached its peak. But for now, it will suffice. Do-hyuk says a portal will open on a stone nearby, and a huge flow of mana will come with it. These portals perform a sort of mana baptism on humans, granting them something called awakening circuits, which allows them to conduct mana. The only problem is the aliens that come through the portal, and in Korea's case it was invaded by creatures resembling giant ants and cockroaches. Do-hyuk remembers that in the future he came from, they were weak enemies, but in the present, even 6 well-trained hunters would struggle to defeat just one of them. But he believes that, with the experience he's gathered, he should be able to beat them, so he gets ready for the portal to open. The protagonist starts counting the seconds and prepares to attack. However, despite all this preparation, nothing happens. He thinks that maybe he was a bit early and decides to wait a bit longer. But 10 hours pass and even starts getting dark, and the protagonist becomes furious and extremely confused by all of this. He even thinks he might have gotten the date wrong and considers coming back again the next day. Then a week passes with nothing happening as he returns there every day, and some people even say he looks like a lunatic doing that. To make things worse, a month goes by and the protagonist is still standing there on the spot waiting, with some tourists even mistaking him for a stone guardian. He continues like that for another half a year, with some reporters even mistaking him for a hermit, and his sister and mother see a report at home and can't make any sense of it. So much time passed that even the protagonist couldn't take it anymore, and for some reason, the world was more peaceful than ever. Do-hyuk then decides to get a regular job and quit this alien stuff, even getting scolded by his boss. He starts remembering the past and all the heroic titles he received, but now that he got the title of savior, he had become just a regular worker. The protagonist doesn't even know how he's going to face the other heroes after this embarrassment, since no superhuman ever awakened or alien appeared in that world. So he decides he has no choice but to accept that maybe he ended up in a different universe's version of Earth, and that in the end, the invasion never happening was actually a good thing for the people of that world. Even though he feels disappointed that all the effort he and his team made was for nothing, he says he'll at least enjoy the peace. But then his phone rings, and he starts getting a bunch of notifications saying that his rent is due, and now he's a regular worker. Peace is not an option. Back at home, his sister named Li Jan scolds the protagonist who doesn't understand anything. She starts complaining because over the past few months, the MC was unemployed and still spent money on stuff to prepare for the alien invasion. His sister continues, saying that their parents are worried about him since one day he suddenly started running around saying the world was going to end. The protagonist thinks about how he had no way of knowing that the world would actually be fine, so he prepared. We then see a flashback of Cabinet telling the protagonist what his plan was when he returned to the past. He told the boy to gather as much money and supplies as he could, and that it didn't matter spending money because no one would come to collect during end of the world. But for better or worse, the world didn't end, so now he had to find a way to pay back the money he owed. His sister tells him to quit that construction gig he picked up and asks him to help with her live streams since she's a streamer and says she'll even pay him. The protagonist teases the girl, but she says she at least needs someone to play multiplayer games with her. He even tries to refuse, saying he's never played any video games. But she says that since he's good at sports, he'll pick it up quickly, and he's the only one she can ask. The protagonist thinks about it, but says it's not like streamers make that much money to begin with. But then his sister pulls out her phone and says that even though she's only been streaming for a few months, she makes 15 million won, which is about 60,000 reads, and says she'll give her half. Hearing that, the protagonist agrees and starts playing a kind of VR game with his sister, becoming her servant and calling her master. They connect inside the game, and the narrator says this is a game where you farm enemies to gain resources. It's a Dark Souls-style combat game that's famous for crushing newbies, and the two of them enter with his sister even having a custom avatar. They enter a mansion in the game, and the chat keeps teasing his sister for being scared. But the protagonist thinks that house actually looked really good for taking a nap. They continue walking deeper into the mansion while the chat comments on what they're doing, until suddenly, a screen pops up in front of them explaining the game's story, which of course scares the MC sister since she's a scaredy cat. The protagonist gets impatient with the screen and dismisses it, skipping the tutorial in the process, which annoys his sister since it's a difficult game. He apologizes, saying he just clicked everything that popped up in front of him without thinking. His sister complains, saying she shouldn't have trusted a newbie, but the chat keeps teasing her, saying she was also a newbie in that game. She then starts asking the chat for tips, and she even gets some useful advice. But the most important one is never choose the reality mode. And when the scene cuts to the protagonist, he had just chosen exactly that mode. Of course, this makes his sister even angrier, and the MC says he was just trying to open the doorknob and accidentally clicked it. She starts to panic because she had received a donation to beat the game on her first run, but now she wouldn't be able to. But the chat supports her and starts donating to give her more challenges, which motivates both siblings to beat the game on the first try. The chat keeps teasing them for doing everything for money and for making serious faces like JoJo characters. They then enter the house, and the first thing that happens is someone falling from the ceiling and scaring both of them, and the chat tells them to check if the body has any items. They find a pistol and an axe and decide to continue through the mansion, until suddenly, a monster jumps toward them, and the chat says that this creature is famous for ending newbies' runs. But then the protagonist shows that he was once a warrior in the future, and stops the enemy's attack with just one hand, leaving the chat stunned. He manages to hit one of the creature's limbs with the axe and uses it to strike the monster, defeating it in a single hit. Then more of them appear in charge of the protagonist, who begins to defeat them all easily using his axe. After defeating them all and leaving the chat completely confused, the protagonist asks if his sister is okay. But since his face was dirty with the remains of the enemy, it scared the girl, and on reflex, she attacked him. She accidentally ends up defeating her brother, which causes them to fail the mission, and the chat starts laughing at the siblings' failure, which at least brought her a few donations. Somewhere in the real world, a boy known for mastering difficult games named Blackirk hears the news that the protagonist defeated a strong monster. The boy says not even he could do that in reality mode and starts researching more about the protagonist. Back to the siblings, they respawn at the mansion entrance, and the girl apologizes for making that mistake. The MC is in serious mode and says it was his fault because he should have fought twice before giving a pistol to an idiot like her. Then he says that from now on, she just has to follow him if they want to complete the mission, and the girl doubts him, saying he's screwed without her help. But the scene cuts, and we see the MC running with her in his arms, slicing through all the enemies with one hand. The girl is shocked by her brother's power, and the chat keeps teasing her. The protagonist said is that from now on, he'll handle the combat and everything else, and that she just needs to stay there cheering for him and not get in the way, which makes the girl annoyed. Despite his sister's complaints, he goes further into the house until he encounters a mini-boss. Jen gets scared and pushes the MC toward the monster, which makes him angry, and he nearly gets hit and defeated but manages to escape. The protagonist then continues fighting the monster, but he doesn't seem to have any difficulty. He even says that compared to the monsters he faced in the future, this one isn't anything special. Still, the enemy is very tough. The protagonist's blade can't pierce its defense, and it even tries to grab him with its giant hand. But realizing this, the protagonist decides to use his foot to force the blade into the giant. In the end, he manages to defeat the giant, leaving it unconscious on the ground after the attack. This leaves both the chat and his sister completely shocked by the protagonist's strength. He says that actually it was all very easy, and the chat doubts he's a newbie, asking him to show his status screen. The protagonist shows the screen, and everyone is surprised that despite the little time he's played, he has a status level of 134, which is higher than that of professional athletes. Moreover, his stats come close to the maximum limit a human can reach and are nearly a world record. The MC realizes that his training for the end of the world finally paid off for something, but that's when everyone is interrupted by a donation from Blackirk, which surprises everyone since the boy was the first player to discover a secret route in the game. The chat explains that in the normal story route of the game, that mini-boss the MC defeated is supposed to be very difficult, so players would lose and be captured by him. But Blackrock was the first player to manage to defeat the boss after 7 attempts, and with that, he unlocked a secret storyline route. The protagonist hears this and mocks the boy, saying that if it took him that long to win, that he's probably not that good at the game. Hearing this, the boy gets angry, but says that even as a newbie, Do-hyuk managed to beat the boss, so he sends him a challenge. His sister asks what the challenge is, and Blackirk offers 1,000,001 for the protagonist to solo the entire game using only the axe. The chat doubts his ability since the game has many difficult bosses, and that would be nearly impossible. The boy realizes he may have gone too far and even tries to offer a challenge using some better weapons. But the MC, being impulsive as always, starts clicking around in the menus and accidentally accepts the axe challenge. With no other choice, he immediately sets off to complete the rest of the game, taking his sister along. The first boss they encounter is a giant monster that uses a chainsaw to attack. Blackrock says that charging in against that chainsaw is a guaranteed defeat due to its complex attack patterns, and that players usually use a group strategy, where one stuns the boss before the other attacks. But the protagonist doesn't care about strategies, and he attacks the enemy saying that in his time, they fought with their teeth if they had no weapons. He says that if there wasn't a solution to a problem, they created one since he was always the hunter who defeated the most enemies in his group. To him, a kiddie game of less than 5 years of history could never compare to the 20 years of conflict he lived through. He attacks the enemy's legs, saying that if an enemy was fast, you just had to cut off their source of mobility. And after destroying its mobility and balance, it's time to deliver the final blow. He then manages to knock the enemy down and says that in the end, all humanoid monsters have the same weakness, the neck. He charges again at the enemy, but just when it looks like the strike will land, the monster blocks the axe with its arm. The monster then gets ready to hit the protagonist with a chainsaw while his sister watches helplessly from a distance. The protagonist then jumps to dodge the attack and starts exchanging blows with the boss, who continues to raise its defense. But for Do-hyuk, if the enemy's defense increases, then he just needs to keep increasing his attack too. So he unleashes a focused strike that not only slams the enemy's chainsaw into the ground, but also pierces through it with a single hit. But the protagonist attacked so fast that he couldn't stop in time and ran face first into a wall. In the end, the enemy was defeated, and the MC's sister appears to congratulate him on the victory. The chat asks how do Yip manage to do all that, and he explains that you just have to break the enemy's balance, and the rest is easy. The protagonist's real-world battle experience helps him easily recognize enemy attack patterns and even how to dodge them. But the chat keeps teasing him, telling him to try dodging a bullet then, since he got shot by his sister in the last mission. But the MC doesn't get the joke. That's when the girl finds a passage to the next area. They decide to follow it. On the way, they find a new axe, and he starts bragging because in the future, he used dual axes too. But then a bunch of zombies appear, and now they seem to be surrounded. Still, Do-hyuk grabs his axe and charges at them, mowing them all down with ease. even impressing the chat. As he dodges, Do-hyuk keeps giving tips to the chat like it's the easiest thing in the world, even though he's a superhuman. The chat notices that more zombies are showing up than usual for that area of the game. And with that, Do-hyuk realizes that he's gonna have to go all out now. He starts spinning, slicing through all the zombies around him. After spinning so much and taking out several zombies, he gets dizzy and needs to stop for a moment. The chat says he hasn't gotten used to the VR movements and must be feeling motion sickness, but they also tell him to drop that game and go try something called Rise of Valhalla. The MC1 asked what kind of game that is, but his sister interrupts and says she found more clues about the monsters in the current game. She says it's hard to read, but it's already going to help a lot, so she starts explaining what was written in the notebook she found. In this game, the monsters are mutating because of a fungus, and the cure for that fungus is in a trailer outside the mansion. She says they can get the item and use the mansion sprinklers to spread the cure and weaken the mutants. The chat warns that it's best for them to do that or the next fight will be impossible, but the MC says that even without that strategy, it will still be easy for him. His sister asks him to think about it a little because if he loses, they'll have to start all over again. But Black Earth donates and challenges them to beat the boss without using the cure. And since they're mercenaries at heart, they don't hesitate and accept the challenge. A trapdoor opens in front of them, and the siblings immediately jump into it. They fall into a kind of sewer, and the protagonist starts remembering how he used to hide from aliens in the sewers in the future. A rat shows up and scares the sister, but Do-hyuk can only think about how he could cook that rat to eat later. But then giant rats full of rage start charging at them. The protagonist gets super happy about all of this and that he has food to spare, so he starts cutting down all the rats one by one with a smile on his face. He even forgets he's on a live stream and tries to eat what's left of a rat, but his sister tells him to stop with that disgusting behavior. Out of nowhere, something hits the piece of rat meat in the protagonist's hand, leaving him confused for a moment. And when they look up, there are two enormous giants with tentacles instead of arms. They're called Chaos, and they're a late-game boss that can regenerate. The chat says that this boss wasn't supposed to appear here and definitely not two of them, so it seems like the difficulty just spiked out of nowhere. But the protagonist couldn't care less about the two giants. He just wants to grab more rats to have a barbecue with them. He gets mad at the giants because they made him lose his food and says he's going to take them down. Then the fight begins and the giants charge at the protagonist, and his sister says the game must be messing with them, putting hard bosses all the time. BlackRock explains that the reality mode they chose at the beginning of the game increases the difficulty based on the player's stats. And since Do-hyuk's stats are so high, the game decided to crank up the difficulty a lot, and we see the protagonist taking a direct punch from the two giants. Even so, they keep fighting and dodging attacks, saying it's fine, and that the game is finally getting interesting. The chat explains that no matter how many times he attacks, the KOs can regenerate very quickly, and when the MC strikes one of them, they counterattack by releasing a toxic gas from their mouths. This gas inflicts poison status on both of them, and the sister says they only have 10 minutes before they're done for. Even so, the protagonist keeps fighting, while the chat is in shock how hard the fight is. Do-hyuk says it doesn't matter if they keep regenerating. All he needs to do is keep attacking until they can't heal anymore. Even after getting hit in the head, the giants keep moving like nothing happened, and one of them starts heading toward the protagonist's sister. That's when someone in the chat decides to explain that they will keep regenerating until their core is destroyed, and that gives the protagonist an idea. He dodges an attack and delivers a powerful kick to one of their faces, knocking the giant backward. Then he climbs onto the creature's chest and pulls out both of his axes, saying that if the target is the heart, then that's the only place he'll attack from now on. While he's searching for the heart, the other giant jumps in to try and attack him from behind. And it looks like he took a direct hit from the giant's claws, and his sister gets worried that he's done for this time. But when the scene cuts, we see that the protagonist dodged. The giant actually hits claws into the chest of its own partner. After being baited into the attack and defeating his own ally, the remaining giant gets furious at the MC and charges at him. But this time, Do-hyuk is ready and slashes the giant from top to bottom with his axe. He hits the creature's heart and brings it crashing down to the ground, already defeated. After that fight, the chat goes wild, with some even saying they want to be like him in dual-wield access too. They get notification that they've completed the mission. His sister, who's no fool, asks if no one in the chat wants to donate after witnessing that legendary battle. The chat donates. She thanks them, saying she'll use the money to buy food for her brother, while the protagonist can't even believe they made so much cash. His sister then asks what they're going to do now that the mission is complete and if he wants to keep playing. But the protagonist says they've already been playing for 8 hours and he's starting to lose focus, plus the dizziness from it being his first time in VR. The chat says that's enough for today, and the MC says goodbye, saying that next time he'll go even further, and finally, his sister ends the stream. They loud off the game, and Blacker wonders who the protagonist is and what he could do with that level of strength in other games. The boy says that no matter what game it is, that guy would be a massive hit, and that's why he has to bring Do-hyuk over to his side no matter what. The seaman cuts the nighttime of the protagonist's house. His sister asks how he managed to do all that in the game. She starts playing around with a frying pan and almost hits him, and the MC complained that that's exactly why she can't get a boyfriend. That makes her mad, and she says she can get a boyfriend whomever she wants. But the MC asks then why she's been single since birth, which irritates her even more. She then goes back to the game topic and says her brother looked like a maniac defeating all those monsters like he'd done it before. The protagonist says he just kept doing stuff and it all worked out, but his sister remembers, and he's always had good reflexes since he was a kid. She remembers a day they went to a fortune teller and she said the MC would save the world one day. The MC's parents believed that fortune teller and decided they wanted him to become an important general in the world government. But the PE teacher said Do-hyuk wasn't very smart and that he'd stand out more if he focused on sports. His sister agrees with the teacher, saying her brother could have won a bunch of medals if he'd become an athlete, and that today their parents regret that decision. Back to the present, she asks if the MC doesn't want to start streaming himself since he did really well. The protagonist hesitates, but the girl says that the way he played today, he wouldn't even need to say anything, just his gameplay alone would attract a crowd. He thinks about it for a bit and how he used to fight for his life so many times, and that in the game he felt a similar thrill to that life. For him, the regular work life was getting boring, and he couldn't stand working construction anymore. But playing that game was enough to break him out of that dull routine and finally make him feel satisfied with life. He still misses his old life, and even with all this, he still needs to think a bit more since games don't pay his bills. But his sister says that just from the little session they did today and with BlackRock's donations, he already made 3 million won. He's speechless hearing that and realizes that if he made all that in one day, he'll be able to pay off his debt quickly at this rate. He agrees, and since his sister will cover the other expenses he needs, he decides to do everything she tells him to. Since she's in a good mood, she decides to help him. But when she checks her phone, she sees something unexpected. BlackRock had sent him a DM, and his sister thinks it's amazing because he's a famous streamer, and maybe he's looking to do a collab with the MC. At first, he thinks about saying no, but his sister tells him he needs to accept because a collab with BlackRock would make his views skyrocket. The protagonist starts complaining, saying he's not going to collaborate with some guy just because he gave him money and that he's only interested in doing collabs with girls. And his sister starts wondering if she should just finish him off right then and there because of how stupid he is. The next day, they receive a delivery of new capsules to play VR. The MC shows up with his face all messed up. He had thought it was a different kind of collab his sister was talking about, and that made her angry. After clearing up the misunderstanding, he decides to start streaming and use his sister's money to buy a huge modern capsule. He says his sister is kind of rough, but has a kind heart, so he promises he'll save up a lot of money and buy her tons of presents. The protagonist then logs into the game, but this time he's playing in standard mode and not in reality mode. He says he's looking for a game that can satisfy his desire for battle since the last game failed to do that. Looking for the available games, he realizes they're all expensive, so he starts searching for some cheaper ones. He ends up finding an old fighting game he used to play when he was younger and gets excited because they made a VR version of it. So he buys it since it's super cheap and gets teleported inside. The game asks him to enter a nickname, and he picks a really weird one he used as a kid, naming the character "How much does it cost?" The first thing he does when he enters is test the strength level of his body, punching the ground and breaking everything around him. He's inside a training room for fighting games, and he starts testing all kinds of techniques he knows. The man who hadn't explained it before, but there's a difference between reality mode and game mode, which is the one he's using now. In reality mode, you control your character freely, but in game mode, you input commands and the character moves automatically to perform the technique. He tested all his skills and saw that there are still some limitations, but he's still beyond human limits. He realizes he's trained enough and asked the computer to put him in a ranked match to test a real fight. The computer says he doesn't have a high enough level yet to play ranked, so instead, he asks to search for a public room. While waiting for the computer to find a room, he starts choosing which character he's going to use. The scene then cuts, and we see another streamer fighting and defeating her opponent with a single strike. Her name is Harang, the Sword Princess, a famous streamer and one of the top players in the Ultimate Fighter tournament scene. The chat explains her background, and it even makes the girl a bit flustered as she says it's been a while since she stopped playing professionally. She explains that Ultimate Fighter is pretty dead now since everyone's ditching the game to go play something called Iron Fist. So Harang asks the computer to find her a ranked match since it's been a while since she logged into Ultimate Fighter. The computer finds a few matches, but they're all going to take a while to start. To avoid killing the stream's momentum, she decides to join a public room since it's hard to find ranked ones. The chat donates asking her to win 5 matches in a row, and she jokes, telling them to go easy on the people. But the chat replies that since the game's popularity is dropping, public rooms are now filled with insanely strong veterans. These players use them to mess around with newbies, and even Harang herself once got destroyed by one of them. Hearing that, the girl gets annoyed and says that was only because she wasn't using her main. She then switches to her alternate outfit and says now they're going to see how strong she really is. The computer creates a room named Only Beginners to attract weak players for her. She then appears in the middle of a volcano, which the chat says is a classic stage from the game. Her opponent is ranked Platinum and is using a character named Hoken, known for being easy to use and deal in high damage, which is why it's one of the most popular in the game. The fight begins, and he charges in with a direct punch covered in dark flames. Harang says that's the best strategy against a mage-type character like hers, stay as close as possible. So she backs off and starts charging a spell to keep her distance. But instead of casting a normal spell, she just throws her staff straight at her opponent's face, who asks what kind of magic that is. But the staff is actually just a distraction, because she immediately gets close to him and slams him hard into the ground. And it doesn't stop there because she says that attack was another distraction and that she really was charging a spell. She grabs the staff and uses her character's ultimate, summoning a giant Mahairu and throwing at a Hoken. With nothing else to do, the guy just takes the hit head-on, saying that was a bit too much for him. Harang even mocks the guy, telling him to say goodbye to his platinum rank. She wins the battle, and the chat says that in the end, that guy wasn't even that strong. Harang says she needs to hurry and get those 5 consecutive wins and asks the computer to find another player. This time, a player appears using a character called Steve, and the chat jokes that it's a character only newbies pick. The player starts warming up for the fight, and no one understands what's going on. But actually, he was just hitting the arena floor to check if the lava was real. Harang wonders if it's really okay for her to fight him, since he's surprised even by the lava on the stage. She tries to hide that she finds it funny, but decides to just start the fight and get it over with. The countdown begins while the chat tells her to go easy on him. When the fight starts, the protagonist charges straight at her with a boost. At first, Harang easily dodges his attack, saying it's nothing compared to Hoken's speed. That was just a distraction because the protagonist manages to get close to her and lands several punches in a row without giving her time to react. And in the end, he defeats her with a perfect without even realizing the match was already over. The chat is shocked that a newbie beat a veteran with a perfect, but the protagonist just says he was feeling really good. Round 2 is about to start, and she reappears in the arena, saying it's not over yet. The chat, as always, teases her, but Harang says she only lost because she let her guard down. Harang then says he must be a veteran pretending to be a newbie, and the chat agrees he must be acting really well. The girl then says this time is for real and switches to her main, the character that made her known as the Sword Princess in her pro days. She argues a bit with the chat, who say she's pulling out her main after taking a perfect. She says now she's going to win fair and square. The girl draws her sword and says she's going to fight seriously now. So they better start offering condolences to the protagonist because he's going to need them. The countdown for the fight begins again, and Harang starts wondering who he is, since he definitely can't be from the Beyond Heaven rank, at most maybe Diamond. That's the highest rank in the game, and only 100 players have reached it, including her. Since the protagonist's fighting style is different from what she's used to seeing in Ultimate Fighter, she suspects he might be from another game. The countdown ends, and she charges at him saying she's going to teach him the true meaning of control. Do Hyuk dodges the first attack and immediately gets ready to counter with a strong punch. Harang says this time she's ready, but before she can strike, the protagonist grabs her hand, stopping her from moving her sword. And she ends up taking another combo of direct hits from the protagonist and realizes that it's already over for her. Once again, the protagonist wins with a perfect, and the chat even gets a déjà vu feeling seeing it all happen again. But Harang doesn't give up and asks to fight him again. But the result doesn't change and she keeps losing the same way. Do-hyuk has already beaten her 5 times in a row, and even so, she keeps coming back to fight. He says that at first it was easy to beat her when she was using the mage character, but she actually gave him a bit of trouble once she started using the sword. The MC chose game mode instead of reality mode so he could test out the specials in the game. But since he skipped the tutorial, he didn't see how to use those attacks. He wanted to feel what it was like to have his powers back and says that next time he won't skip the game tutorials anymore. Harang finally responds and he says she played really well last time, asking what her tier is. She gets extremely irritated by that question and starts yelling at him, but no sound comes out, so he thinks she might have muted the game to focus better. But then he starts receiving a bunch of rematch requests from her all at once. The protagonist ignores all of them and says he needs to log off to research how to use the specials in that game. Harang tries to talk to him, but since the protagonist can only read her lips, he thinks she's asking for his in-game name. But the problem is that the protagonist's nickname is "How much does it cost?" When he tells her that, the girl gets confused and even more pissed off. She finally unmutes to talk to him, but it's too late because he's already logged off, so she stands there swearing she'll get revenge on him. The chat reminds her that there's a default game feature that mutes the mic for newbies, so he didn't hear a single word from her during the entire fight. She says it's impossible that he's a newbie because during the fights, he dodged her special technique, and not just anyone can do that without knowing the move. So she suspects he must be a retired pro who was looking for her or a legendary player from the golden age of the game. The chat asks if he's not the legendary player, Anatole, who was known as the best among the pros of the golden era. But Harang says it can't be him because Anatole strictly follows attack patterns, and the protagonist didn't follow any pattern. He just reacted to her attacks. Emmanuel goes back a bit to show what she was saying, while the protagonist couldn't hear her voice. She says it's impossible he doesn't know her because no one else on that server plays as Harang except her. But since the protagonist can't hear her, he just ignores it. Back to the present, she says she's going to find out who he is and make him quit the game forever, and the chat teases her saying she's salty about the loss. A few hours later, Doya logs back into the game and asks the computer to show his match history. The protagonist has already won 14 times and hasn't lost once, and says that except for the first fight with Haram, all the others were pretty weak and made basic mistakes. He managed to reach diamond ranks, so he only needs 2 more to reach the top rank, where he hopes to find stronger opponents since the game is full of scrubs. But just in case he doesn't find anyone, he decides to add at least one person he's already beaten, and he chooses Heron. He sends the friend request and waits for her to accept, but then he's interrupted by his sister, who says it's time for them to start the stream of that horror game from before. Do-hyuk enters the horror game, and the chat is already complaining that they're late, but at least they recognize him as the guy with the axe. The protagonist doesn't understand where his fame came from, but Ji-yen says that his videos are blowing up on the forums, and everyone saw him fighting in the last live. She says her brother should get ready and grab his axe because now the show's about to start. The scene quickly cuts to Harem, and she just received Do-hyuk's friend request, except he changed his name to provoke her, and that made her explode with rage. Back to the protagonist, he feels like someone is bad-mouthing him, but decides to ignore it and keep playing the game with his sister. They arrive in front of a boss gate, and Jan says this time she read the game instructions. So she opens the passage by pressing a brick on the wall. Walking a bit more through the mansion, they reach a giant gate. Jan says the boss is on the other side, and they can see several zombies inside the room. The chat says they're the doorman of the boss room, that there's supposed to be a strong monster among them, and there's none there. Instead, there's a woman in a wheelchair in the middle of the room, and once again, the chat starts freaking out because she's not supposed to appear this early. Jian calls her Chloe and says she's the mother of all those enemies. Do-hyuk says that based on her reaction, she must be the first person who got infected and turned into a zombie. He realizes she can control the zombies, and that reminds him of an old enemy he faced in the real world. The protagonist remembers that when the alien invasion started, China split into 6 different countries, and in one of them, there was a guy who acted like a king. This guy could grant abilities to others as if it were an infection and made those people follow his orders. He used that ability to fight against Chen Tao, who was the strongest hunter in China. But he got completely soloed by Chen Tao, and that made the rest of the world realize that hunters who had transcended were immune to poison and toxins. Back in the present, Do-hyuk gets nostalgic and asks if that really is the leader of the zombies. The chat says that, according to the game's story, that woman was the protagonist's wife, or rather, his ex-wife. Jian explains that if you take too long to finish the game, the wife is taken over by the infection, which causes her to age. But she also says they were fast, and she wasn't supposed to turn into a zombie this quickly. The chat reminds them that last time they played, they didn't spread the cure in the zombies, and maybe that's why she turned so quickly. In the original route, they were supposed to use the sprinklers to spread the cure, which would slow the infection effects, but because of Blackirk's challenge, they never did it. Because of capitalism, they skipped an important part, and now the game difficulty has increased to maximum level. The chat continues, saying that depending on their progress, they could have even found a vaccine to cure Chloe, and Do-hyuk feels bad for leaving her like that. The protagonist says it's a pretty weird story, but Ji-yen says that in the end, it was all Chloe's fault anyway because she's the one who spread the infection. Ji-yen starts narrating the story. Chloe was a researcher from an organization that wanted to create a biological weapon. She stole the sample of that weapon and tried to escape to sell it to a rival organization. Along the way, she got caught and ended up imprisoned. But during the escape, she ended up getting infected by the sample. Do-hyuk asks if that means they just have to defeat her to finish the game, and Ji-yen says that's exactly what they need to do. He readies his axe and asks his sister to open the gate because he's going all in on her. She presses the button, and while the chat is surprised that they're already facing the final boss, the protagonist charges into the room. Do-hyuk enters the room and draws his axes, saying that now he's going to start the show they've all been waiting for. The zombie horde charges at the protagonist, who says that if this is the best line of defense they got, then the boss is going to be a piece of cake. The zombies keep attacking, and the chat comments that even a single bite could inflict the infected status on the protagonist. The boss watches from the middle of the zombies, just waiting for the protagonist's attack. He keeps defeating them all, and the chat says he hasn't even used his whirlwind/technique yet. The protagonist says that even for him, using that move multiple times in reality mode is very exhausting. The chat says it's kind of cute that he gets dizzy using the move since he's not used to VR. After a while of fighting, he gets tired of beating up zombies and decides to charge straight at the final boss, jumping over all of them. But we see that as he leaps and gets close to landing the final blow on the zombie queen. She stands up from the wheelchair and lets out a scream that blasts everything around her away. The protagonist can't dodge the attack and gets thrown far into the debris. When the scene cuts, we see that she blew up half the mansion with a single strike. The chat notices that there's something strange in the pile of zombies that were blown away during the explosion, and then the protagonist's hand appears from under the pile. He managed to hide from the attack by staying underneath the zombies. Then he stands up with his sister and says he barely managed to escape. He used the zombies as a shield, and thanks to that, all the zombies were defeated, leaving only their leader. Do-hyuk says that all they have to do is be careful with that scream attack, and the rest of the fight should be easy. But the chat says it's just getting started, and then the zombie leader starts releasing some kind of sludge from her eyes. When the scene cuts, we see that this was actually her entering her second form, turning into a mass of living sludge. And as if things weren't bad enough already, she also summons 3 monsters to fight alongside her. Jem complains, saying that normally the boss should only have 1 monster helping her during the final battle, but her artificial intelligence went out of control. At that moment, she receives a donation from someone in the chat pretending to be an angry ad, which gives the girl a scare but had perfect timing. The chat comments that if they were an AI and saw someone beating the game with just 2 axes, they'd be mad too. Jen asks how they're going to deal with those monsters since they can still turn invisible, but the chat says you just have to shoot them to make the invisibility go away. But then they remember that the protagonist is still doing his challenge to beat the game using only 2 axes, so he can't shoot. So they suggest that Jain do the shooting, since she's been carrying a gun since earlier, and the girl agrees, saying she's left all the work to her brother and wants to help. But the protagonist remembers the shot he took to the face the first time and breaks the girl's gun, telling her not to even think about it. He says the best help she can give is to not get in the way, and she says it was just a small mistake and that she was only trying to help that time. The chat, as usual, keeps teasing the girl who gets annoyed with the mockery, saying she didn't want that to happen. Then the protagonist thinks that in the end, this is a game where both of them should be having fun, and his sister was just trying to help. So he decides he's going to let her help and tells her to use one of the grenades he picked up earlier, but only when he gives her the signal to throw it. The chat braces for disaster, but Jan says at least she knows how to throw a grenade, and the protagonist agrees, saying after all, she's not stupid. And after a few more jabs from the chat, Do-hyuk says it's time to start the plan. He charges forward while carrying a zombie on his shoulder and tells his sister to get ready. Seeing the protagonist going all in, the snakes helping the zombie leader activate their camouflage mode and turn invisible. He then gives the signal for Jen to throw the grenade, and the girl tosses it just over his head, almost hitting the protagonist. Then we see that the grenade caused a huge explosion that hit one of the snakes. Jan apologizes because her hand slipped, and that's why she almost hit her brother with a grenade. But he says it was all calculated, and he already expected her to miss when throwing, which is why he picked up a zombie he used as a shield. Then, with more praise from the chat, the protagonist grabs his 2 axes and charges at the remaining monsters. He keeps fighting and attacking them all mercilessly. One of them nearly manages to bite the protagonist, but thanks to the chat's warning, he dodges just in time. But the real challenge comes when he tries to strike one of the snakes in the head with his axe. It just doesn't go through. That distraction lets another invisible snake catch him off guard, and we see that it was actually the snake that took the grenade earlier, but has now recovered. While the protagonist defends against the attacks, the chat says that the snake's invisibility disappears when they are attacking or are attacked. The protagonist realizes he's in a tough spot, but he starts smiling since he's finally enjoying a real fight. Because of his attack, one of the snakes has injured eyes and can't use its invisibility anymore, but the other 2 are still camouflaged. Dohyuk remembers that he's seen aliens who could camouflage by changing their structure, and these snakes don't even come close to that level. He closes his eyes to focus and says that now he's gonna finish them the same way he did with those aliens. He charges full speed toward the boss and the snakes, who also get ready to attack. On the way, he senses the intent of the 2 invisible snakes and prepares for the incoming strike. He dodges the attacks from both snakes while the chat, even after seeing him fight so many times, is still shocked at how strong a protagonist is. Dohyuk then climbs onto the head of the one with the injured eyes and prepares an attack while the snake screams in rage. The chat says that even so, he hadn't been able to pierce the snake's defense with the axe, so there's nothing he can do now. Even so, the MC thinks that if the developers paid attention to the details, there must be a reverse scale that can serve as a weak spot. So he grabs his axe and strikes it directly, finally managing to lodge his axe into the creature. Mami starts focusing all of his attacks on that weak point and eventually manages to pierce through the monster with a direct strike. The chat starts praising the MC again, and the boss, seeing all of this, gets furious and uses her tentacles to attack. But the MC notices and dodges all of them with great skill, as if he were dancing. In the middle of it all, he's almost caught again by a bite from one of the snakes. However, he turns his axe at the last second and defeats the creature, which falls to the ground screaming in pain. But his axe ends up stuck in the creature's mouth, and he barely avoids another tentacle attack from the boss. He dodges at the last second, and the attack hits the snake, which definitely finishes it off for good. But there's still one snake left coming full speed at the protagonist. The snake seems to have swallowed him, and the chat is still shocked, as if he were really going to be defeated by that. He manages to cut the enemy from the inside out, saying that the biggest weak point of a reptile-type monster is the inside of its body where there are no scales. Finally, he finishes off the last snake with his axe and even gets some flirtatious comments from the chat in the process. But the fight isn't over yet. The final boss, Chloe, the fungus queen, is right behind protagonist and gets ready for the final battle. Dohyuk doesn't think twice and charges of the enemy, saying that now it's finally time for them to really have some fun. The battle begins, and amid several donations from the chat rooting for their victory, the protagonist keeps cutting down the tentacles with his axe. The fight ends, Jean appears and celebrates because they finally beat the game. She thanks everyone who followed along, but the protagonist seems uneasy. He didn't even realize the fight was over and thinks about how everything ended so quickly just as it was starting to get interesting, and that the fighting game was more fun. For him, fighting against Harangue and her unique attack patterns was much better than this fight that he barely noticed. He says that compared to her, the monster's patterns in this game are way too predictable, and that this was way too easy. Out of nowhere, they get a donation from Blacker, but this time praising the protagonist, who thanks the guy and says he's happy for not screwing up the mission. The chat starts complaining about Blacker because he's been posting Dohyuk stream videos on his own YouTube channel. Jen explains that since Dohyuk doesn't have a channel, they told Blacker to post the videos on his since it's big and would attract attention. Blacker says goodbye and says he's looking forward to the next collab between the two. Jan realizes she forgot to tell the chat that they were doing a collab with Blacker and that next time Dohyuk will be playing with him. The chat is surprised, and Dohyuk says that this time Jan won't be participating because the next live won't be on her channel, but on his own. They ask what his streamer name is going to be, and the MC says he hadn't thought about it yet and was thinking of just using his real name. The chat tells him to use a name similar to his sister's, but he says there's no way he's copying his own sister. Jan asks what's wrong with her streamer name, and the MC says there's nothing wrong. It's a great name. But then he strikes a cute pose just like his sister's and says that if he uses a name similar to hers, he'll have to keep embarrassing himself like that all the time. Seeing this, his sister bursts out laughing at how ridiculous her brother looked doing the pose, and the chat says they've just witnessed a horrifying scene. After that embarrassing moment, he says he thinks it's better to just stick with the name Lee Do-yuk, and his sister, still dying of embarrassment, says her eyes are gonna melt after seeing that. Finally, she announces that her brother's streamer, debut, will be the next day and tells everyone to follow him. They say goodbye to the chat, and Do-hyuk thanks everyone and says he hopes to see them all on his stream the next day, finally lining off the game. The scene then cuts to the next day at BlackRock's house. He and Do-hyuk are on a call looking at comments from people suggesting games for him to play on stream. The boy says that since Do-hyuk has such high physical strength, they want to focus on games that rely on physical skills to create stream content. The MC asks which game he has in mind, and the boy mentions one called Rise of Valhalla. He explains that it's a Viking-themed game set in 9th century England. The game received a lot of praise for its complex battle system and epic fights. The boy continues, saying it's the most highly recommended game on the forum, and asks if Do-hyuk is up for playing it. Do-hyuk asks if this game also lets you choose between reality mode and game mode like the horror game they played, and the boy says yes. He also says it seems like the perfect game for Do-hyuk, considering what people have seen him do on stream. He explains that not all players have Viking-level physical strength, which is why almost no one plays in reality mode. In that mode, you don't even need to reach a boss to suffer. Even regular guards can easily defeat you. BlackRock says he's gotten beaten up by that game many times, and the MC asks how far he managed to get. The boy says that after many attempts he managed to beat one guard, but then got wrecked by the next guy who showed up, and he won't say who it is to avoid spoilers. The MC says he did really well when they played Ultimate Fighter together. So if it was that hard for BlackRock to beat just one soldier, imagine how hard it must be for regular players. BlackRock gets embarrassed hearing that and says he got completely destroyed by that guard earlier. The boy shares that before they started talking about the streams, they were playing Ultimate Fighter together. He just wanted to play one last match with the protagonist before quitting the game forever. His plan was to win once and then brag forever about having beaten the protagonist. But as expected, he got completely destroyed, a perfect loss. After that, he realized the protagonist might actually have a shot at finishing the Valhalla game that he couldn't. The boy says that only a few chosen players have made it to the end of the game, and even they needed a ton of tries to succeed. And he says he's sure the protagonist can beat the challenge without having to restart even once. The protagonist then says okay, and that to live up to all that confidence, he'll have to work even harder. He then gets into the game capsule and contacts his sister. He says he's counting on her to be the mod for the stream that day, and the girl gives him a thumbs up. Then the protagonist logs into Ultimate Fighter once more, and the chat immediately welcomes him asking if he's going to play Diablo. He says they're not playing Diablo, but that he'll reveal what game it is later. The MC asks if they have any questions for him, and the chat wants to know who he is and what he does for a living. He feels awkward thinking about what to say, but knows he can't just go around telling people he trained all day to save a world that was never invaded by aliens. So he just says he doesn't want to talk much about the past, and it's better to leave it at that, with the chat noticing that he's uncomfortable. Changing the subject, he says he wants his main content to be games, so he asks the computer to show the list of games. Ultimate Fighter shows up on the list. The chat asks if he's really going to play it, and the MC says yes because it's a childhood game of his. But chat wasn't too happy with the game, asking him to play Iron Fist instead. But the MC expected that reaction and asks if the game is really that bad for them. Jen shows up to talk to him in mod form where she looks like a little fairy and says that game is really outdated. She says the same thing as the chat, that if he wants a real fighting game, he should play Iron Fist, and that no one likes Ultimate Fighter anymore. The protagonist thinks that maybe streaming that game isn't such a great idea after all. Then he receives a donation asking him to play Iron Fist and says he's already decided which game he's going to play today. Jan says there are already a lot of people watching, so they better start playing soon. The protagonist then starts the game, and the one he chose is Rise of Valhalla. After diving into the game, protagonist appears wearing an awesome Viking outfit. The MC is surprised by the game's look, which is all black and white and very dark. Jian shows up reminding him to choose the game mode, reality, or game mode. Do-hyuk says he's gonna pick reality mode, and the chat is surprised that he's playing the first time and already going straight into that mode. The chat comments that Vikings usually use 2 axes, which would be perfect for the product, who then realizes he's already equipped with 2 axes. Before starting, the MC says they still have a new guest, and then a beam of light appears. We then see it's Blackrock, who's here for the collab and is also wearing Viking gear from the game. The chat starts complaining, calling him a mosquito that came to steal the product's views, but the boy replies jokingly and takes it in stride. The MC says the collab is going to be like he explained earlier. Blackrock helps with the stream, and the MC lets him upload the videos on YouTube. Blackrock came in with a rate of 2,000 viewers and says he's more like a bee than a mosquito. Jan is happy because they passed 5,000 viewers. But the chat isn't entirely wrong to call him a mosquito because behind the scenes, the boy is only thinking about how to benefit from the protag's fame. Finally, it's time to start the game, and the MC asks the computer to launch the session. The computer then deactivates standby mode and begins the story mode of the game, and a cut scene starts playing. In it, it's said that in the year 793, a terrible calamity fell upon the kingdom of Northumbria, and we see several ships sailing through a storm. That calamity was the Viking invasion led by Ragnar and how they arrived on the coast of Northumbria. Ragnar fought the old king but was defeated after falling into a trap set by him. But before being defeated, he cursed the Saxons, saying that when his descendants learned that he fell, they won't stand by idly. And before being finished off, he says he will be in the Hall of Heroes created by Odin, watching their downfall. After that scene, the game cuts to one of Ragnar's warriors named Jorund, who is also the tutorial NPC of the game. The MC is among the warriors being trained by Jorund, who says their king has fallen and now they must take revenge on the Saxons for what they did. He yells to everyone that only those who earn the warrior's recognition can become true warriors themselves. Blackrock says that this NPC usually teaches combat and defense techniques in the normal mode. But in reality mode, you have to earn his trust just to be able to play the game. The chat says it's a mode only for experts, and beginners should just shut up and stick to normal mode. Blackrock says he'll be the first to try the warrior's trial and walks up to Jorund. He's even wielding 2 axes to copy the protag. He says he already knew how to fight well with a sword and shield, so using 2 axes shouldn't be that different. The boy faces Jorund and says he's done reality mode before, so he'll be able to beat him easily. Jorund is impressed by the 2 axes, saying it's been a while since he's seen a newbie use dual weapons. He mocks the boy, saying he's going to teach him how to wield a real axe, and calls him to a duel. Blackhawk charges at him quickly, saying he'll make the warrior ease words. While attacking, he explains that using 2 weapons has its downsides, but also brings the element of surprise. He attacks Jorund with one hand as a distraction, and the warrior thinks the strike is weak. But then the boy pulls out the second axe and goes for a surprise strike with a hidden weapon. Only he was too slow and left himself open, taking a punch and getting slammed into the ground by Jorund's attack. He tries to get up while the chat asks why he tried using 2 weapons when he doesn't even know how to use them properly. Jorund humiliates the boy, saying he's pathetic and should go back to the kitchen where he belongs. The warrior remembers the boy and calls for the next participant while the chat keeps mocking him. The MC goes to check and Blackrock is okay, and the boy asks if he was really that bad at fighting with 2 axes. Dogiek says it's not even that he was bad. It's more like he didn't do anything at all. Hearing that makes the boy even sadder, and the chap calls him trash. The MC tries to continue by saying he just stood there getting beat up, but Blacker cuts him off saying he already got the point. Dogif explains that using 2 axes might look cool, but they require a lot of skill from the user. And he even tells the boy to go watch his horror game gameplay to understand how it's done. Blackrock gets even more embarrassed because he says he watched it several times to learn and still could manage. The protagonist feels very proud to hear that even while the chat keeps roasting the boy in every way imaginable. But then he gets another donation, asking him to go fight Jorund already and show how it's done. Blackrock decides to stay out of it to avoid getting beat up again, and the MC says this will be his first mission in the game. He starts receiving a bunch of donations and realizes Jorund must be really tough, with Blackirk saying the guy used to be a berserker. The boy says he was strong even for mid-game bosses, and meanwhile the warrior is shown beating up background characters. Jorund starts getting bored with the extras and tells the next participant to step forward already. After receiving a donation from his sister, the MC says just winning would be too easy, so he has a better idea. He looks Jorund in the eye and says that if he can win in less than 10 seconds, then the mission will be complete. With that declaration, he gets a flood of donations urging him to win in under 10 seconds, and some also roast Blacker just for fun. The boy tries to defend himself, saying that if he had his sword and shield, Jorand wouldn't have lasted even 3 seconds. While the boy argues with the chat, the MC talks to Jorand, and the warrior asks if he's going to use 2 axes too. But before he can answer, the warrior tells him to come at him and prove whether he's worthy of using 2 axes. The fight begins, and the MC throws one of his axes at the warrior. He uses that to close the distance quickly and go in for a close-range attack. The attacks continue, and Jorand says that finally a worthy opponent has arrived. Do Hyuk realizes this guy is pretty strong for having blocked his attack. He thinks that maybe the game is collecting their combat data to make the game harder. While staring down the warrior, Dojev thinks about how there must be even stronger warriors in this game, but even they can't compare to his real-life experience. But he says that before thinking about the rest of the game, he needs to deal with Jorand first, so he starts preparing for the fight. The warrior senses the MC's determination and also gets his axe ready. He charges in to see if the MC's fighting spirit is as strong as his skills. They trade several blows, and it looks like the MC is finally at a disadvantage against Jorand. But he recovers and uses a kick to break the enemy's combo. He takes advantage of the openings to stop the enemy's weapon too, and finally uses the Viking's own attack to vault over him, ending the fight with a powerful kick right to the face, which seems to knock him back. But before falling, Jorand shows his strength and grabs the MC by the pants, calling him a brat and preparing his next strike. But the MC uses his arm to deflect the attack and lands a solid kick to the back of the warrior's head. Jorand doesn't give up and tries to strike again, but is stopped by the protagonist's axe, which lands near his neck as he declares the fight is over. The mission is complete, and we see Blackrock speechless at the product's strength. Dohaya receives several donations for having won in under 10 seconds and thanks everyone for their support. Jorand congratulates the MC and says it felt like he was seeing the son of Odin standing right in front of him. Blackrock says this is the greatest honor a Viking can receive, to be called the son of Odin. Jorand asks the MC's name, and the boy replies that his name in the game is Gunnar, and the warrior says it's a beautiful name, recognizing the MC as a warrior. After that, the protagonist receives a few notifications, saying that his next mission is to gain the recognition of 4 more warriors. Everyone in the chat is impressed with the quest he received because Jorand doesn't usually give that kind of quest to just anyone. Blackrock says that it was a side quest called Son of Odin Quest, and if you receive the recognition of 5 warriors, you earn that title of Son of Odin. He says it's a symbol of distinction and shows that you're a pro player. It wasn't the first time that quest had appeared, but it was the first time someone got it during a tutorial. Blackrock says that this was a new discovery for the game, since now they know that Jorand was one of the warriors and that you had to beat him in under 10 seconds to get the quest. The chat keeps teasing the boy, who replies by telling them to try using dual axes to see how hard it is. The protagonist tries to encourage him but ends up making him feel worse by accident, saying that he doesn't have talent. Then he tries to fix it, but the boy was already pretty pissed off at that point. He gets tired of being insulted by the chat and decides that now he'll face Jorand with the sword he's used to. The protagonist tries to support the boy, and even some people in the chat start donating to encourage him, saying he really is a good player. It's just that the MC is on another level. Now motivated, Blackbird grabs his sword and shield and says he's going to prove he's not that far from Doyek's level. Jorand then taunts the boy and tells him to come at him while grabbing his 2-handed axe. The boy runs at him, yelling that he'll make him swallow those taunts just like the protagonist had said before. Blackrock attacks, and Jorand says that if he wants to do any damage, he'll need to put more power into his blows. So the boy keeps striking with his shield, and seeing that Jorand says that's the spirit he was waiting for. The warrior kicks the boy and says now it's getting interesting. They keep trading blows between Jorand's axe and the boy's shield, and in the middle of the clash, Blackrock manages to cut part of the warrior's face. But Jorand strikes back with a punch right in his face, saying it's not over yet. Even so, the boy doesn't give up and charges with everything while yelling that he's Blackrock of Valhalla. Meanwhile, Dohyuk just watches and says the boy is really good with the sword and that he fights more naturally like this than with the axes. But even with the boy's efforts, the fight ends with him taking a blow and falling to the ground, with Jorand saying that was as far as he would go. Even so, the warrior still recognizes Blackrock as a warrior, saying that with a sword, he at least proved himself useful. Jorand says that's all for today and dismisses everyone, while the MC congratulates Blackrock for the fight. The warrior then looks at the two and asks if they're confident in their hunting skills. The MC realizes it's a side quest, and Blackrock, even feeling a bit awkward, still says they're confident. He tells the two to join the hunting team to gather food, and they accept the mission. The scene cuts to nighttime, and the two are near the end of the hunt and manage to catch a rabbit. Blackrock asks if the MC has never hunted with a bow before, since he was quiet the whole mission. Even though he shot magic arrows once in the real world, he says he's never really shot before, only with toy arrows. Blackrock asks him to try and shoot a few arrows in a tree, and the MC agrees. Then he grabs the bow, gets ready to shoot, and ends up missing the tree, leaving the chat surprised that there's finally something the MC doesn't know how to do. Even though the MC says he can get used to it if he practices a few more times, Blackrock gets all smug and says he can teach him if he wants. The boy starts saying he's the Robin Hood of Valhalla, but it's clear he's lying to show off. Soon, they're interrupted by a deer passing by, and they decide to try and hit it with their arrows. Blackbird jumps in front to shoot, saying he's going to show all these years of practice with bows in medieval games. He then shoots and misses, hitting the tree and scaring the deer. The boy tries to shoot again, but the MC tells him to step aside and shows that he doesn't need a bow, throwing his axe in the direction of the deer. Of course, he hits the target, which leaves Blackrock completely stunned. After grabbing the deer, they complete the hunt, and a new quest appears. They receive a notification that a Saxon invasion is happening, and at the top of the mountain we see an army watching a village and commenting about the enemies. One of them tells another soldier named Gareth to go call the commander. The scene then cuts, and we see Saxon army coming to attack the Vikings, and they are led by their leader named Carol. Back to the protagonist, the message tells them to return to camp to prepare for the raid, and a donation says they'll give money for each soldier the MC defeats. Blackrock says they need to return to the camp to regroup as the message said, and the longer they take, the more Vikings will be lost. But the MC disagrees, and greedy as he is, says it's better to go straight to the Saxons and meet the Vikings on the way so they can far more along the path. Blackrock even tries to warn that there are too many enemies for them to be alone, that the MC is blinded by money and decides to go straight into the fight. We cut to Carol's army, and they're the first ones attacked by the protagonist who shows no mercy, coming down on them with axe swings. One of the soldiers warns that it's just two of them, but they have no idea who they're dealing with. Carol mocks the protagonist who runs straight at the guy without caring about anything, not even Blackrock's warnings. The battle begins and the Saxons advance, but the MC, already noticing the free XP, charges in with a smile on his face. The soldiers' shields are useless because when the MC isn't swinging his axe, he's punching them instead. He starts mowing down all the soldiers once again without any difficulty. When one soldier tries to attack him from behind, the MC turns around and knocks the guy out with a single punch. Carol is shocked by the MC's strength and asks why he doesn't stop attacking. Meanwhile, Blackrock charges at the leader and says he'll use him to prove his worth. The MC has already defeated 6 soldiers without even breaking a sweat and wonders if Blackrock is doing okay in his fight. But, of course, the boy is getting wrecked by the leader and starts calling out to Blackrock for help. But the MC sees all this and thinks the kid's fine, so he goes back to defeating soldiers. While the chat continues doing what they've done most, mocking Blackrock, the MC says he'll reduce the number of soldiers in the meantime. And even when surprised by some warriors, he keeps defeating all of them, even getting white eyes like a beast in the heat of battle. The MC finally defeats most of the soldiers, and the remaining ones start trembling because they know what's coming. Dodiet finds it strange because it's the first time he's seen NPCs get scared in a game and asks if they're going to try to flee from him. Hearing that, Carol, still fighting Blackrock, tells them to stop being cowards and get back to fighting. But the soldiers just drop their weapons on the ground, saying that at this rate, they'll all die, and then they run away in fear of the protagonist. Staying this, the MC activates his evil mode and says he can't let them run away like that and gets his axes ready to throw at them. He throws an axe and takes out one of the soldiers, leaving the one next to him completely stunned. The MC then attacks the other soldier with the axe, but realizes he used both, so he decides to start using the bow now to defeat the remaining soldiers. The chat asks if he's giving up on the mission of using only axes, but the MC says he has a plan and starts aiming the bow. He tries to shoot one of the soldiers and ends up missing, then he realizes what he's been doing wrong this whole time. Do Hyuk aims again, and this time hits the running soldier right in the leg. After the soldier falls, he reveals that this was the plan. He just wanted to bring them down so he could get close and retrieve the axe for the finishing blow. The soldier tries to beg the MC to spare his life, but the guy doesn't care and finishes off the soldier with his axe. He then looks at another soldier on the ground crawling, and with his eyes now red, he attacks the enemy even as he pleads for the MC not to come closer. After all that fighting, the MC says it was all too easy, and the chat asks how he got so good with the bow in such a short time. But the MC just says he tried shooting a few times until he got the hang of it, and now all that's left is to defeat Carol. Blackrock keeps getting beaten up by the leader, who takes the chance to catch the boy off guard when he tries to call for the protagonist, but the boy manages to roll away. The protagonist says that's not how you roll to dodge, and the boy starts desperately asking the MC for help, who seems to ignore all his pleas. That's when the boy's sword breaks in the middle of the fight, leaving him completely defenseless. But when Carol was about to land the final blow, the MC finally decides to do something and jumps in front to protect the boy. Carol looks at the protagonist angrily, but he doesn't even get the chance to do much because with a single strike, the MC's axe finishes off the army leader. After another mission completed, the MC asks if Blackwork is okay. The boy asked why the MC didn't come help earlier, and he says he didn't help because he didn't want to steal a boy's victory and thought it would be rude to jump in the middle of the fight. The boy complains saying he was clearly in trouble and takes out all his frustration on the MC, saying he doesn't know how to recognize a problem even when it's right in front of him. And says that if the MC didn't want to help, he could have just said it straight, but he's interrupted by the Vikings who come looking for them. Joran comes running from the middle of them and pushes Blackrock aside because he's worried about the protagonist, asking if he got hurt. Blackwork, realizing who Joran's favorite is, says he's fine too, but ends up getting trampled by other Vikings worried about the protagonist. The boy says that's enough for today and decides to log off the game without even saying goodbye to the protagonist. The chat feels sorry for the boy, but Joran says he doesn't care about him. And that's when the MC wonders if the tutorial is finally over and if the open world of the game is about to begin. The MC is unsure of what to do now, but the chat donates for him to go face someone called Beowulf using only the gear he has now, and he accepts the mission. Joran asks if he really wants to face Beowulf and says he's way too strong to face alone. Vav, even thinking twice, says he's going with him, so the MC receives a message that Joran has joined the party. The MC agrees but asks what the benefit is of having an NPC in the group, and the chat says they helped during tough moments, so he decides to just head toward the objective. They ride off on horseback, and the MC asks who his Byleth guy he has to face is. Joran explains that he was a brave warrior who served the king, but after the king kicked the bucket, the guy completely lost his honor. He says he heard the guy's been roaming around pillaging nearby villages. And after hearing that, the MC receives a quest from the game, saying that Beowulf is one of the renowned warriors, and the MC will need to earn his approval too. The two then arrive at Beowulf's hideout, but Joran says he has a long history with Beowulf, so he won't go in. But the MC can call him if needed. The MC then, without a second thought, charges into the fortress and realizes there are several guards he'll have to defeat to get inside. They try to stop him, but the MC charges forward on horseback, saying a true Viking doesn't need to rely on stealth attacks. He smashes through a gate, scaring all the guards inside, and finally enters the fortress. The guards try to defend themselves, but they're all shot down by the MC, who now knows how to use a bow. One of the guards hits the horse, forcing the MC to leap off and shoot at the guards. Amid a flurry of arrows coming from all directions, the MC lands in the middle of the fortress as the desperate guards shout for everyone to raise their shields. Seeing this, the MC says he'll stop using the bow, which he calls a coward's weapon, and then pulls out his two axes and says he's going to finish the mission using them. Now the real fight begins. The MC charges toward the center of the fortress and defeats several soldiers along the way. Even with their shields, they are no match for the power of the dual axes that Duyuk wields. One of the soldiers tries to surprise the protagonist, but he uses his own strength to grab the enemy and throw him away. The soldiers try to shoot arrows at him. He uses the soldier he was carrying as a shield against the arrows. They panic and start firing everything they have at him, but the MC advances while throwing soldiers into the air. Eventually, he reaches the platoon leader, and with incredible speed, he raises his axe to deliver the final blow. The soldier screams in desperation, but before the hit lands, another axe comes flying toward the protagonist, which he manages to deflect. And we see that the one who threw the axe was none other than the man the MC was looking for, Beowulf. The soldier feels relieved at the arrival of his boss, but Du-hyuk tells him to shut up with a finishing blow. Beowulf gets furious for losing one of his men, and the MC tells him to stop wasting time and start the fight already. The warrior then grabs his weapon and charges at the MC, saying he must be insane and that he's going to make him regret attacking him. But then the scene cuts to another game, and we see a boy with 2 yellow gloves defeating his opponent. This is Anatole, the legendary player Harang mentioned last time. He's back to streaming after being away for a while because of a tournament. The chat gets worried because he only made it to semifinals of the tournament, and they ask if he's okay. But the boy says yes. He just needed some time to clear his head. In his thoughts, Anatole says he was a great champion and ultimate fighter. But when he switched to Iron Fist, he kept getting stuck in the semifinals of the World Tournament. But he says he can't give up now and tells the chat he feels like revisiting his homeland till he closes Iron Fist and opens the game Ultimate Fighter. Just by opening that game, his stream views dropped like a rock, but he doesn't seem to care and is just happy to be back. He decides to play as Hoken, his alternate character, just to get used to the game again. Then he asked the computer to find a match for him just to warm up. That's when the scene cuts back to the protagonist, but he's no longer in the Viking game. He's at home. After the fight with Beowulf, they uploaded the video to YouTube and already racked up a ton of views, making Jihyun really happy with the result. They comment that there are already memes from the stream because it got so famous, and that at this rate he'll be able to stream on his own without her help now. The MC thanks his sister for helping him as a mod, and the girl says she's going to sleep early because she's tired. But the MC says it would be a waste to go to bed now and that he wanted to try out this Iron Fist game everyone's been talking about. But on the way to his room, he changes his mind and decides to play Ultimate Fighter again because he's close to ranking up. Still, he finds it strange that Harang is always offline in the game. He thinks it might just be bad timing between them, or maybe she quit the game. Either way, he logs in and decides to think about it later. When he looks for a match, he ends up finding an opponent with 0 wins and 0 losses, and it also seems like an account that just recently returned to playing. He accepts the match, and we see that the account belongs to Anatole, who finds the protagonist's username strange, not to mention the fact that he has no losses. Seeing this, he figures it must be someone with a high rank, maybe an alternate account of someone he knows. Chat recognizes the MC and calls him the god of trolling, saying he showed up on Harang's stream. But when they mention that he completely wrecked her, that grabs Anatole's attention, and he wants to find out the MC's true identity. The boy accepts the invite and enters the match and immediately challenges the MC to attack. But the MC taunts him, telling him to go first so he can see what he's in for. Seeing this, Anatole says that if the MC is going to underestimate him, then he'll make him regret saying those words. Anatole charges at the MC with a fire punch, but the MC dodges and tries to land a kick, only to be grabbed and forced to leap away. He prepares another punch, but the MC once again dodges even while upside down in mid-air. And after blocking Anatole's attack, the MC lands a knee right in his face and then knocks him to the ground with another kick. Now it's the MC's turn to use the fire punch, and since Anatole is on the ground, he doesn't know how to dodge it. But at the last second, he manages to leap away, while the chat is once again shocked by the strength of this unknown opponent. The chat comments that Anatole is rusty after so much time away from fighting, but the boy thinks that's not it. There was something more in that clash between the two. But he can't say exactly what's bothering him. He just knows that if he doesn't figure it out soon, he's going to lose this fight. He then decides to charge at the MC to get better feel for his moves. Using the attack as a distraction, he tries to grab the MC's leg to bring him down. But just when he thinks he succeeded, the MC is faster and nearly lands a knee right in his face. Anatole is surprised by the MC's reaction and wonders if it was just a lucky move. But he doesn't have time to think because the MC is already coming at him with another punch. Anatole does his best to try and block the attacks, but in the end, he takes a knee to the arm and another to the face, wondering if the MC is reading his movements. The boy keeps trying different attacks, trying to find a blind spot, but none of them seem to work and he keeps getting knocked back. The MC uses a technique called Iron Mountain, which is usually used as part of a combo after a setup move. But Anatole notices that he used the technique directly without any setup, and that requires a lot of skill because the timing has to be very precise or it won't deal much damage. The MC keeps reacting to all of Anatole's moves and charges at the boy using another technique called Red Flame Stance. Anatole explains that this is a technique that prevents the opponent from escaping and is followed by an extremely powerful finisher, but it's not good to use at close range. Thinking it was a mistake by the MC, Anatole tries to take advantage of the opportunity since the animation of the technique can't be cancelled once activated. He prepares to time it just right to dodge the move and readies himself to strike when the MC becomes unable to move. But just when he thought he had the fight in the bag, the MC changes the trajectory of the move at the last second and hits the boy with a direct blow. And that's when Anatole realizes what had been bothering him. Since to change the trajectory of the technique, you have to do it manually. In the middle of a flurry of punches from the protagonist, Anatole realizes that the MC was playing in reality mode, which means he wasn't using the game's assist features to activate abilities. The fight ends with the protagonist's victory, who compliments the boy saying he did very well. The boy can't believe what just happened and how it's possible for someone to fight without using the system assist, so he asks for a rematch to confirm it. The MC agrees, and once again, they fight with Dodio coming out victorious, to no one's surprise. The boy lies on the ground, and the MC still has the audacity to say it was a very close match. But he doesn't give up and asks the protagonist for one more rematch, and after 5 matches where the MC won them all, Do-hyuk says that's enough for today, and this time the boy agrees. Do-hyuk realizes he only needs one more victory to reach the Beyond Heaven ranking, and there, he'll finally get opponents on his level. But he's worried that his viewers might find out he's playing another game off-stream, especially an outdated one. So he decides he's going to keep his identity hidden and only reveal it once he reaches the highest rank in Ultimate Fighter. And now we understand why Harang thought he changed his name. He had actually activated a system to keep his account private. He could change his appearance, but decides to keep the one he has now and figures maybe it's a good time to try out Iron Fist since it's a more popular game. But before that, he decides to add Anatole and sends him a message of encouragement. Anatole's system notifies the man that he has a new message from someone saying he has talent and has sent a friend request to play again. People currently watching have surpassed 20,000 and are commenting that he has to accept the friend request, saying he really has talent. The man laughing awkwardly says he never thought you hear that, especially not in this game. Someone domains asking the man if he has any idea who it was, and the man says honestly he has no clue. Right after, he pulls up a screen showing the fight and tells them to do a review, pointing to the moment of the kick. People in the chat say it's really impressive that the opponent managed to land that kick without any assistance, that the other guy was really good. Still watching the fight, he thinks it's not just that. Every movement from that man seemed to be done without assistance, and that if the chat knew, they'd lose their minds. He thinks he believed he had already discovered everything there was to learn in this game, but it seems there's still more to master. Maybe that's why he's been having trouble with Iron Fist lately. Maybe the answers to his questions are there. The man then ends the stream and tells his chat that that's enough review of the fight for now. Smiling, he thinks there's no way he can take all that beating alone if he doesn't post that fight. Others will definitely end up finding him, so it's better to keep that a secret. He gets up and smiles while thinking he wants everyone to feel what he felt when he was defeated by him. A girl slams the table while we still see chat comments about the fight, and she yells that the opponent's nickname is stupid. Frustrated, she keeps saying that everyone is talking about him, and that if it weren't for that, her brother would be story number 1. She says he's been so busy with Valhalla lately. But when he logs into the game again, she's gonna wipe the floor with that punk's face. Turning back to the computer, she says she won't let his ranking fall, but she'll adjust the boards at least. Then she wonders if he's back already, since she only asked him to go to the convenience store. Meanwhile, we see him arriving at the convenience store, thinking it was a pain to be there buying things for her, and that he only went because he had the card. He bumps into a boy while thinking about taking the opportunity to buy a bunch of snacks. The person he bumps into falls to the ground. We see a knife drop. The man kneels down and asks if the boy is okay and if he can get up. The boy, a nerdy-looking kid covered in bruises, says yes and apologizes. Suddenly, he seems to recognize the boy as Big Ears Jaegal-min. The nerdy boy then asks how he knows his nickname and real name, and then asks who he is. He wonders if that really is Jaegal-min, the one who served under him before at the beginning of the apocalypse. They gathered those with weak abilities into an underdog group. Among them, he led the 13th Squad. The one who planned all the 13th Squad's operations was him, the great strategist. The captain starts complaining, asking who gave him alcohol again. The girl says their strategist needs a bit every now and then to keep the gears turning. He pushes the girl, saying the older ones always treat him like a cute little kid. The girl squishes his cheeks, saying he's really strong, such a feisty and cute one. Another person arrives and tells the two of them to knock it off and asks if it wouldn't make more sense if she considered him for a partnership. She grabs her giant hammer and tells him to get lost, and the other guy, scared, says he'll stop suggesting that. The man with purple hair walks away thinking he got so scared of the woman just now that he almost had an accident right there while she asks where he went. The captain then points with a spoon to where Big Ears is. He says the boy always does the same thing when he drinks. He climbs up somewhere high and plays with the wind like he's a tragic hero. The girl notices that he really is doing that again. She asks him to come down and promises to stop teasing him because it's dangerous up there. The boy then, with his back turned, calls out to his captain. He then says that if he were big and strong like him, he wonders if he would have been teased less. He puts his hand over his eye as he keeps speaking, then rips off his eye patch saying maybe that eye of his would still be there, and his little brother would still be there, he wouldn't have lost him the way he did. He continued saying that if he were as strong as the captain, strong enough to defeat extraterrestrial forces and monsters without needing powers, he says he would protect everyone. Suddenly, the boy seems to stumble as his voice begins to tremble. The man with purple hair catches him before he falls and says that every time the boy drinks, he gets like this, whiny and complaining about the past while standing in a high place. Geico approaches from behind and calls out to the captain. He reports that he found their base of operations and that they're in the same place where that crazy girl he keeps seeing lives. The captain then says it's time for them to go, tells them to leave Big Ears with Huada and wake up Old Man Mangti. Then, leaving with the group, the captain says to move out quickly and cleanly and that breakfast has to be back at the base. A few hours later, back at the camp where they were expected, we see Big Ears shouting that it was a trap energy in his hands. A trap was set by the extraterrestrial beings to hunt down the human rebels, and a whole division of their soldiers and 2 warrior-type enemies were there. Gecko was executed right there in that battle. Savoy was also lost during that mission. Winyo went into berserk mode and is fighting alone against a warrior-class alien, nearly every limit. The captain and the old man were severely injured and unfortunately could no longer fight. Big Ears then says that as vice-captain of the 13th Squad, he gives the order for and Mengshi to escort the captain and the old man out of combat. The girl begins to panic and was about to say something, but Big Ears interrupts her by shouting her name. Clearly suffering as he channels power into his hands, he smiles at the girl. He goes on to say that the only thing that can buy them sometime is his shield. Then he tells her to follow the plan, protect the captain for him. Running back, she says he better not die in vain, because if he does, she'll come back and end him herself. The rule was clear in the 13th Squad. If all else fails, save the captain and be ready to fight another day. Right after, we see Big Ears conjuring his powerful shield as we hear the squad's vow confirmed. He says that one day they'll meet again and have a drink over each other's graves. We return to the convenience store with a man thinking that that was the last time he saw Big Ears and now seeing him in another timeline. He stands up in a defensive stance asking if he's part of Min Su's gang, remembering that was the guy who swore revenge against him. The man says he has no idea who Min Su is and that the boy's name bag says Jigal Min. So that's how he knew his name and called him Big Ears without thinking. Embarrassed, he apologizes for calling him Big Ears and asks again if he's okay since he fell hard earlier. Reaching toward the knife, the man says the boy dropped something. The boy quickly runs over and picks up the item, clearly trying to hide what he was buying. Nervously, he says he wasn't watching where he was going, apologizes and runs off. Our guy sighs and says he's a different person now in a different timeline. This was a connection that wouldn't happen in this life. Suddenly, he notices something and turns in the direction the boy ran. In some alley, we hear someone scream in pain and then start cursing. Big Ears is struck in the face. Another man asks Min Su if he's okay while we see him, teeth clenched and arm bleeding, asking if the boy tried to fight back. He kicks the boy, asking how trash like him dares to pick up a knife against him. One of Min Su's friends grabs him from behind, telling him to stop beating the boy or he'll go down too. But he's too angry and breaks free from his friend, saying he'll handle that bastard himself. He grabs Big Ears by the hair, who's already got a black eye and is all bruised up. He brings his face close to his and tells him to burn this into his brain, that this is what happens when he disobeys him. The friend sees someone approaching and tells the man to get lost if he doesn't want to see something horrible happen. He starts saying for him to leave when the strange man surprises him with a punch to the face. The man says that for a little short-legged rebel, he was surprisingly fast. The other chubbier man who had been watching everything silently until then decides to go after the newcomer, but he's easily thrown back and ends up falling and painfully hitting his back on the ground. Then the one who was beating up Big Ears asks who he is and what the hell he's doing there. He smiles and says that he's the former leader of the boy who happened to be passing by. Big Ears then remembers that this is the guy from earlier from the convenience store. The other man looks surprised and asks if he was with the Three Pads gang. Then punching the man in the face, he says he's with the Mutts, while the other says that means he must be from Yongsan. They continue fighting while one asks if he's with Yun Po Hyun, and the other says he doesn't know anyone. Big Ears, watching the fight, sees that the man is very strong and wants to be like him. A system window informs that lodging is being processed, while the man says Jeon's going to chew him out for being late. He remembers the street fight and curses the guy, saying he was late only because of him. Then he remembers Big Ears begging him to take him as a disciple while he tries to answer a phone call. He recalls having to scramble to convince John that he wasn't yelling at her, but at the boy, and even so, he thinks if Big Ears is in this timeline, that means the other members of his old group must be there too, and he wonders if he should look for them. Sometime later, thinking better, he says no, that he should focus on cleaning up his own mess first. He thinks he's drowning in debt and needs to fix that before anything else. So he asks Comp to open the chat window. The folks in the chat start showing up, asking if just once he'll start the stream on time. The chat says he should have gone live yesterday, that he would easily been #1, and he says he heard that his clip hit top 2. People were talking about some Anatole and Gotham, who he clearly has no idea who they are. While people ask when he's gonna log into Valhalla, he says he got curious and starts researching before entering the game. He starts watching the clip of the much talked about fight from the day before. The man asks if that guy is really him, and the chat starts spamming question marks. The boy says he bought the game Ultifight 3 days ago and only has 16 hours of playtime. The chat goes wild seeing that he's had the account for 3 days and managed to pull off a burning crescent kick without assist. Then he shows he has 27 wins and 0 losses, and the chat starts losing it. He then says that now that the chat can confirm it was him, he's gonna play Valhalla, while the chat wonders if he's really gonna do that to them, play another game. Confused, he asks if the folks weren't here for Valhalla, but the chat just wants to see him play Ulti-Fight. The chat then starts proposing all kinds of things, asking him to play Ulti-Fight and become the #1 ranked player and so on. The boy sees the donations rolling in and notices there's already a lot of money coming in before he even logged into the game. Clearly changing his mind after seeing the money coming in, the boy says he's changed his mind and will play Ulti-Fight. Then he logs into the game while the chat keeps joking and interacting. At night, we see a building with several floors lit up and someone saying that it wasn't them. A man slams the table, saying all of this is a pain, and he already said it wasn't him. He continues saying that if it were him, he wouldn't hide, headstream, and profit from it. This man is named Beyond, and he's a former professional player of Ulti-Fight. Someone then donates money to his stream and says the identity of God has been confirmed. Not a pro player, but just some random streamer. Beyond tells his chat that he told them it wasn't him. He smiles then and comments that he was really curious to know who that player was. The chat comments that Anatole got beaten up by the guy, and Beyond says the other guy had been out of the game for a year, probably rusty. Smiling, he tells the chat he'll show he's even better than this god and tells his computer to start the game Ulti-Fight. Next, we see the match of him. That's So versus Beyond. The chat of both players starts going wild over the matchmaking. Beyond, with a maniacal grin, gets extremely excited saying he got the right guy in the clue and that he'll see what he has to offer. The system announces that it's connecting the fights while Beyond says it's time to show this god and what he's made of. Suddenly, we see Beyond drop onto the battlefield surrounded by energy. He enters and says the old master is back, telling them to make way for him to pass. Pointing at the other guy, he asks if he is that rising star, goddamn. Our guy asks his live stream if that was someone famous, and the chat says yes, not like Anatole, close. The chat says that if Anatole is the one who made Hoken so famous, Beyond is the one they call the rightful heir of Hoken. They go on saying that, basically, Beyond is Anatole's successor and a genius of Hoken. As the match starts and the fighters charge at each other, chat says watching this live stream is like witnessing history in the making. Beyond thinks it's just as he imagined that the opponent would open the fight with absurdly offensive pressure. He continues saying that instead of using repetitive attack patterns, he fights using instinct, mixing blows however he feels like. Honestly, he thinks it's like looking in the mirror on one of those days he feels out of sync. Then he commends to the opponent that his attacks are excellent. The chat is stunned that Beyond has lasted more than 10 seconds in a fight against Gotham, while others say he's holding back. Beyond thinks the opponent is slowly pushing him back, that he has no choice but to use that secret move. He then strikes the guy who manages to block by throwing his hand downward. Next, he opens his hand and fire begins to emerge from it. He uses the rising flame wave attack on the opponent who jumps back while catching on fire. The fire then moves toward his feet and the chat asks if he's going to combo one attack with the other. With his feet on fire and a maniacal grin, he charges at Godham. Then he stretches both hands forward as they catch fire, shouting that this is his final move. Hideon yells the name of the move called Flaming Crescent Spear. The move raises flames that soar above building height. Beyond stands still with a slight smile on his face while the chat goes wild over a new attack he invented. Looking at the injury on his arm, he thinks he can only use that move once per match at most. Smiling, he says that this match will definitely be his victory, but we see the opponent with the flaming fist above him. The chat then mourns that he hasn't won yet, and he finally realizes the opponent is behind him. Beyond barely manages to dodge as Godhem comes down with his flaming attack. He then asks how the opponent is still standing. The opponent says that thanks to him, he learned something new and managed to dodge the attack inside the Crimson Flame Wave. He said that's impossible because he spent months developing that move, and the opponent said he copied it after seeing it only once. Gotham says it wasn't that hard to neutralize his spear attack using the Crimson Flame Wave. Then he used the recoil, the Flaming Crescent, kick to teleport out of there while Beyond tells him to say something that makes sense. He shows his injured arm and asks about the explosion when the fire detonates. Every time the Crimson Flame is triggered, the recoil affects the entire area. Gotham looks at his own arm while the enemy asks what kind of tricks he's using since he did all that without a scratch. He then shows that you just have to pull your hand back before the explosion hits. The professional player stares, mouth open, thinking what kind of nonsense he's hearing. Our girl thinks maybe his reflexes are way above normal because they used to play games like sticking their hands into crocodile mouths. Then he starts showing Volve repeatedly saying it's just a matter of pulling your hand back before the damage explodes like that, and the chat goes wild. He thinks that seeing Beyond's new technique gave him inspiration to keep going. An opponent then gets into attack position and says he'll see how strong Godem's new move really is. With flames spinning around him, he charges at Beyond using the Crimson Rush, also created by him. He then thinks that if the man is coming at him like that, his next attack must be the spear since it's a straight line move. Midway, the opponent changes and uses a regular kick instead of the spear attack, confusing Beyond. Suddenly, the enemy's foot starts catching fire. He is caught off guard by it being a flaming crescent kick and thinks that if he can block at least one of the attacks, he'll have a chance to counterattack. But the move is even more surprising. It's a flaming crescent hurricane kick. The attack hits him full on while the guy curses the game. The next second, the system announces God's victory without taking a single hit. The chat goes crazy over his absurdly stupid win against a professional player. Beyond returns to his room and reads the chat saying they can't believe he just got perfected. Still frustrated, he asks if the opponent wants to play another match while the chat shows no mercy. The opponent smiles and says it was fun fighting him too. Then the professional player makes his hands catch fire and says he's going at him again. Some time passes and we see the professional player has lost 5 matches in a row to our guy. He returns again to the lobby while the chat keeps endlessly roasting the professional player. Our guy reaches out a hand to help him up, saying that the triple jump he did was really cool and that he learned a lot from him. Beyond says that if the guy learned anything, then it was worth it. Our hero says those system-based abilities are really cool and that the opponent would probably make a great hunter. The chat says he's standing still and probably loading something while others remember a comment about a girl using a sword. As he remembers the event, he says to himself that he was just honestly trying to compliment his opponents, but the chat just wants chaos. He then asks the guy if his name is Beyond, and he confirms. Then suddenly, he points his finger at the boy. Our hero smiles and says the opponent has talent. He starts laughing off while saying it was really fun and that he hopes to run into him again. Park Jeet starts going wild again, saying this is why they watch Lee Do-hyuk stream. As soon as he returns to his lobby, people immediately start asking him to clue up again. He takes a look and sees that 12,048 people are watching him. R thinks there must be a bug because the number of viewers went up, the mission rewards didn't. People in the chat start teasing him, calling him a mercenary, while others say there are no missions available for him to reach number 1. Once again, with renewed excitement, he says he's queuing up. Obviously, our guy's win streak kept growing, beating new opponents as easily as he beat the professional players, using his new moves and learning others along the way. He kept winning absolutely every match he played. Our guy tells the chat it's getting harder and harder to find matches now, and the chat says it's because he's already beaten all the top players. He watches the chat's reaction as another streamer ends their live with some lame excuse and thinks that's probably the best he'll get today. Suddenly, the system announces a match has been found. Someone then appears saying that tonight he came after the guy who defeated Anatole. So if you logged into the Korean server, a man with short red hair smiles at our hero. His name is Wolfgang Shuki. Our guy notices the man is Japanese, and the chat suddenly turns it into a Koreans-Japan match. Someone in the chat says he's famous in Japan and has already won 2 world championships, proving he's good at both Iron Fist and Ulti Fight. Our guy then asked the system to activate instant translation mode. The opponent asks if he was the one who defeated the famous Anatole and says he'll be the first to defeat that mysterious Korean master. People on our hero's livestream can't wait to see the reaction of the Japanese when this guy gets wrecked. People then ask if he'll ever play with another character, and he says that since they mentioned it, maybe he'll switch for this match. The livestream starts suggesting several names for him, but he points at the opponent and says he wants to play with that one. Everyone is then surprised to see that he picked the same character the Japanese player, a master of that character, is using. Someone then asked our hero if he's ever played with that character before, and he says no, that he'll just get used to it as he plays. The Japanese player then asks if he really picked that character against him, and then asks if he's ever heard of Gunkata. The opponent explains that everyone ends up picking Wolfgang just because he uses guns, but don't realize his weapons are very weak and easily blocked. Even if you get hit multiple times by his shots, your HP bar barely moves, and that's why players think Wolfgang is a bad character. He goes on saying that this is just a mistaken judgment because the character wasn't made for ranged attacks. He was made for close combat using gun kata, and the one who realized that faster than anyone else was Himsuki. He then continues saying he was the one who dominated the world championship with that character and suggests the other guy switch characters now. Our boy then says it's fine, and then he wants to try out that character. The Japanese player then says that if the other insists, he'll show the difference in skill between the two. Our hero then says alright and starts shooting at him, but the other blocks his attacks with his pistol too, saying his aim is ridiculous. The Japanese player says it's barely doing anything while our guy agrees, saying it doesn't seem like it's made of real bullets. Suki says he can dodge that easily and rushes toward our hero, saying he'll show how Wolfgang is really played. He quickly gets right up close to our hero. He throws a quick punch using the butt of his weapon while aiming the other at our hero. Smiling, he says he'll now give the first lesson about Wolfgang's weapons, that they really need to hit from very close range to deal serious damage. But in the middle of his attack, something catches his attention. Our hero has one of the bullets in his teeth while the others fly around him, and the Japanese player asks how he blocked all of those. He then spits out the bullet he caught with his teeth while the Japanese player is still in shock that he blocked them from that close. The Japanese player then says he really does have good reflexes, but that the real fight starts now. He says he'll now teach the second lesson about Gunkata. Turning around and still very close to our hero, he elbows him. He quickly manages to aim one of his pistols at the boy's abdomen. But before he can fire, the boy has already deflected the pistol with his other hand. Taking advantage of the moment the Japanese player slipped up, he smashed the butt of his weapon into his face. The Japanese player, angry, curses him and starts firing wildly. Someone on the livestream then makes a substantial donation, saying that if he wins without getting hit, he'll complete the mission and get the money. Smiling, our hero accepts the mission and begins dodging all the bullets fired at him. To escape the enemy's attack, he jumps and takes cover behind a car. The car is completely destroyed while he lands on the other side on his feet. They suggest a short break while he watches his opponent's movements. Someone in his chat asks if he thinks he has time for that while he doesn't understand, and they say something big is coming. They then explain that the rapid fire isn't just for pinning down, it's to set up the next move, which is Wolfgang's lightning weapon, his most powerful ability. Our hero then puts his foot on the car door and pushes it toward the opponent. The opponent, who was charging his lightning weapon, sees a car coming at him. After charging it, he yells for our boy to go to hell. The shot slices the car in two, making a loud blast and huge impact. Our boy takes advantage of the distraction caused by the car to move behind the opponent. While the Japanese player says the trajectory of the shot was wrong because of the car, he looks to the side and sees our protagonist. He then lands a blow on the Japanese player's face. The opponent complains that he was struck on the ear, but our protagonist doesn't stop, landing another hit on the opponent's face. The Japanese player falls to the ground, dropping his weapon. As he tries to get up, he finds our hero's gun aimed directly at his forehead. he begins charging the powerful shot from the lightning weapon and thanks him for the lesson. The Japanese player then screams in frustration as we witness the great power of our hero's lightning weapon. We see a woman getting up from her computer, impressed, telling everyone to look. She says the boy clearly had no mastery over Wolfgang, but still managed to use a variation of Gonkata that Suki had used in earlier matches. The girl goes on saying part of it was just reaction in the moment, but much of it was Dohyok reading the future and blocking attacks in advance. Her chat then asks if she's the same person who was criticizing him a while ago, and she replies that was a long time ago and to just keep watching. The next day, people in the chat are excited and eager to see more of his gameplay, saying they're missing it. The boy then thinks he should keep playing, but only after defeating all the best players and challengers. He says that not even beating professional players excites him anymore, and that his audience is beginning to stagnate. Recalling the scene of the lightning shot, he says that may have been the true peak, and that a game that is ending truly is ending. He then thinks maybe it's time to try something new. Maybe he'll try this Iron Fist thing. But he also remembers there's another game coming out soon, and thinks there's a special place for small streamers like him to get into EVO. He then starts searching the internet for what he needs to do to register. Before he can continue searching, a new story pops up on his screen. Then he asks himself if that really is Kavanaugh. He remembers it's the one who stayed with him until the end of the past life, the Dragon Emperor of Destruction, Kavanaugh. Going back in time, he recalls the first meeting with one of the new heroes who would form the final human resistance. Then in the Hall of Heroes, a magical monument created, he meets the dragon who asks if he is the one they call Lee Du-yuk. He asked if he's that frail kid who defeated Steelheart, one of the strongest final candidates. And if so, he's worried about the future of the resistance. Then he suggests they should really take a moment to evaluate if that young boy is worth all the hype. Another man there named Chun Tao, known as the Mad Demon, offers to handle the boy, saying he will deal with him. But our protagonist says he won't be intimidated. The girl behind him smiles and says that won't be necessary because Chun was trained in ancestral techniques, and that's why he received that nickname. The man becomes furious with Alyssa and asks if she was part of the group that helped him with that and why she always laughs when it's mentioned. Another man tells him to calm down because seeing Alyssa said she might help him with that, but he replies it wasn't possible due to martial arts. She then tells him to just accept the situation and that once he does, life will move forward. Then the blonde boy smiles at him and tells him to find his joy in the battles. The two then start fighting, and Marcos says he enjoys provoking the Mad Demon while the other chases him with flaming hands. The girl says this is madness, and that before all this, he was known as the greatest sword prodigy. She says this is the Hall of Heroes when the souls of the 9 heroes will rest forever, and welcomes him to the Sanctuary of Heroes. Our hero looks at the woman's outstretched hand as she welcomes him. He ignores it and says that even so, the place feels like a huge mess to be considered the base of human resistance. The woman then pulls her hand back, realizing she was ignored, and says the environment is like that because everyone is tense. He asks why they would be tense, being the pinnacle of all hunters, the elite, the ones supposed to save the world. The woman repeats some of the information, saying they really are the peak of the heroes, the ones who must save the world and all that, but before that, they are still all just human too, for they carry the burden of all humanity on their shoulders. Maybe that's how they deal with that moment or even try to forget the weight of that burden. The woman goes on to say that if he passes that test and ends up becoming one of them, he will understand a bit of what it means to carry the name of the resistance, to which our hero says that, wait, that burden was created solely by fear. Then he shouts that he, Lee Du-yuk, known as the god of war, will be the first to annihilate the dominant race, that he will carry them on his back. He goes on asking for the test to start right away, and the dragon then smiles and says that's the spirit he likes. Suddenly, with the air heating up around him and wings emerging from his back, he says he'll see if he really is everything he claims to be. He realizes that this was another transcendent, or actually the first, but a donator on his stream tells him to wake up. Someone else calls him and he notices the system chat. Then he falls from his chair and the people in the chat start saying that he finally woke up from his dreams. He takes the opportunity to stretch and apologizes, saying he got lost, daydreaming about an old memory. The folks in the chat say he's starting to make money like Master Jiang Chu, and he apologizes, saying he had something to think about. Returning to his computer, he says he needs to find out if that man was really the cabinet he knows and takes the chance to ask his stream who that guy was. The people say he was a guy who got really famous in Altai Fight, who played around with Anatole in the semifinals of the last tournament. He smiles and says it's the same man he knows. He was a naturally talented hunter, and there's no way he got caught up in a game like Iron Fist. Of course, the Kavanaugh he knew was from a different timeline, and it's not like it's really the same person. But apparently, there's one fact that doesn't seem to have changed in either timeline. Kavanaugh was the one who convinced him to max out all his loans in preparation for the apocalypse before the regression. He then remembers the man telling him to take money from every place he could. And now in this life, he's the reason why he's drowning in debt, and that guy has exactly the same face as the cabinet from the previous life. He's going to make the current cabinet pay for the sins of his past life, so he yells at his screen telling him to wait for him. The chat asks when he's going back to playing Valhalla, and someone else says to forget that dead game and go back to Ulti Fight. Seeing the chat, he says he completely forgot about Valhalla, and that there's a war happening on the forums between Valhalla and Ulti Fight fans. He says he needs to pick a game soon while thinking that if he plays Ulti Fight, he could reach rank 1 quickly, but then people would lose interest fast. So he thinks that if he switches to Iron Fist, which shares a player base, he might catch those people and engage them since the games are similar. But he still can't give up on Valhalla and thinks the game has been talked about lately and has been gaining a good number of viewers. Then he lowers his head and says he's frustrated and asks out loud what he should play, Valhalla or Ulti Fight. A few seconds pass as he thinks about it. Suddenly, he slams the table and says he's made a decision. He gets up and says that if he had to choose only one between the two games, he'll say after he eats, making the chat upset while they wait for a conclusion. Sometime later, we see the notification that Lee Do-hyuk has started the stream early, and he, on top of a horse, says he decided to start earlier than usual. Then he says he decided to split the stream into 2 parts. In the first, he'll play Valhalla, and in the second, he'll reach rank 1, and Ulti Fight. Then he notices the number of viewers and sees that 4,000 people are watching him at that moment. Smiling, he thinks he definitely made the right choice. If he had picked only one game, he would be losing money. He says he's already made some progress in the game that he defeated Seolv, even managed to get bonus mission that he'll check out with them. After a large-scale war, King Seolv of Mercia was forcibly dethroned, and Earl Lafric, second in command, now seeks to become the next king. To prevent the fall of the Kingdom of Mercia, the rightful Hera must take power before it's too late, and Mercia once again becomes a vassal state of Wessex. The mission says he must make sure survives his assassination attempt. The chat suggests he should kill and delivered his to the assassins. That way he get in much better reward, but our hero dismisses that option. He sees the place ahead and says that must be Leafric's castle, and that it's time to go in and clear the mission. The chat goes wild seeing him go in there and says that's the wrong path, that if he goes in, Leafric send the assassins. Then he says that's exactly what he wants. He'll go straight to the source before he sends the assassins. Our hero then urges his horse to go faster, and the guards at the gate ask what that is. One of the guards blows a horn while the other, holding a spear, takes a combat stance, telling him to stop his horse. Our hero ignores them and charges directly at the 2 guards, running between them and defeating them instantly. Several guards inside yell that there's an intruder in the castle and prepare to attack, armed with shields and swords. Our hero rides through them, defeating them all from horseback as if they were nothing. The chat warns that more guards are coming and that they'll soon surround him, but he just ignores them and defeats everyone in front of him with his axes. As the chat said, he quickly finds himself surrounded by guards. Then he hits off the horse and tells the chat that many people are here to see Ulti Fight 2, and at this time it won't be the Tornado Barbarian. With a quick kick, he gets one of the guards square on the helmet. That guard falls onto the chandelier, spreading fire everywhere while screaming in pain. Smiling, he says he's going to play Valhalla in the Hoken style from Ulti Fight while holding a torch in one hand. The people in the chat are confused, trying to understand what he's going to do, and suddenly we see him setting his own foot on fire. Then he uses one of the Ulti Fight attacks in Valhalla called Flaming Roar and strikes a guard's back with his flaming foot. The guards yell for them to block with their shields and to charge at the intruder. Again, we see our hero's flaming foot spinning through the air. Then he uses another move called Fire Tornado and creates a huge pillar of fire in the middle of the castle courtyard. As the defeated enemies are thrown aside, the chat once again goes crazy, asking what is happening and how he's able to do those things. Our hero takes a breath after having destroyed the castle guards while the chat in his livestream still tries to make sense of it all. Everyone is curious to know what will happen next. Our hero asks if they're curious about those things that just happened, and everyone agrees they are. Then he gives a wide smile and says if they want to know, they'll know. But to find out, they'll have to pay, making the chat start calling him a mercenary. The viewers then start sending him money donations while he gets super happy and thanks them. Then he explains that what he did was use basic techniques from Ultifight called Flaming Roar and Fire Tornado. Then he knocked over the nearby braziers and simulated the fire created by Flaming Roar with that. And while inside the fire, he used all of his martial arts skills to take out the enemies quickly, all while he talks as he opens the door. The guards behind the door shout that they must stop him from reaching the earls and charge our hero. Our hero then strikes a battle pose and says that for his next attack, he'll surprise everyone. While our hero was in position, the chat already knew he was preparing a move called Iron Mountain Slam. Suddenly, our boy jumps. Then we see him crash through several guards, shouting strike as the guards go flying in all directions. He unleashes more attacks while the chat says our player is on another level. A well-dressed man then with a sword in hand says he's a barbarian scum and dares to set foot in that castle. Our boy tells the chat that he's going to finish it with Wolfgang's weapon, and the chat asks how he's going to do that in the 8th century. People ask how he'll simulate the weapon, and he says the pistol exists in his heart. And in that world, it exists in the form of an axe. Then he throws the axe into the face of the well-dressed man and says that the source of the hare's assassination has been eliminated. As our hero escapes through the castle window, we see someone watching his stream. This man comments that our boy really is a monster. He's clearly training somewhere while saying the combo of the Blazing Crescent and Hurricane Kick he showed in Ulti-Fight was insane. But he's using Ulti-Fight moves in Valhalla, and looking to the side, he wonders whether he should have posted an announcement or not. Suddenly, we see his announcement saying he'll put an end to the road of that boy who reached rank 125 hours. Then looking at another screen, he sees his viewers' reactions to that announcement. The reactions are from his fans saying they're with him, that they want to see it happen. He kneels down in despair saying his fans are expecting it now and that he can't back out anymore. Then we see that he's depressed, thinking about how to back out of the challenge without seeming like a coward. Our hero then switches games and logs into Ulti-Fight, sending his chat into chaos. Seeing the livestream reaction, he thinks that game is really booming lately. He asks his computer how far he is from rank 1 at that moment, and the computer says he's checking the rankings. Then it shows the ranking, saying that currently he's in 5th place, 2nd is Beyond, and 1st is Anatole. Clenching his fists, he says that Anatole is not only at the top, but also holds the title, and he can't let that slide. He tells his computer to start finding matches. We then see the 4th ranked player appear, the girl who uses a sword, and her chat asks if she's still playing and will she reach rank 4. She says she farmed for hours to get that match with him again. Our hero thinks that girl is starting to scare him a bit as he faces her. The girl says she's coldly analyzed his Hogan and that he better be ready this time because she's going all in. He says he was working on something based on her character too, and asks if she minds if he changes things up and uses what he prepared. His chat then wonders what the heck he'll use against her to mount his Hogan. The girl watches as a pillar of light appears in front of her as he switches characters. She's left speechless upon seeing the character he chose, while the chat, as always, goes wild over his choice. Then we see he chose the sword dancer Cesare to use against the sword girl. The girl says he's unbelievable, that he dares choose a sword user against her, and that she'll teach him how hard it is to wield a sword. The opponent then opens with her moves, Sword Bloom. Sometime later, we see the girl defeated on the ground while he says that's the end of the line for the Sword Princess and tells the computer to find a new match. Then the next opponent the game finds is Beyond, but he immediately starts yelling at his computer not to match him with our hero, clearly afraid. The chat notices Beyond's desperate behavior and asks if he wasn't trained to get revenge and all that. Our boy waves and says it's been a while since they last saw each other. Beyond gets serious and says there's nothing he can do now, but that he has something prepared for this moment. He then switches to the character Zodiac and says he'll face him now with his main. Again, after some time, we see Beyond with his head buried in the ground, while our boy walks away victorious, saying he's improved. He tells his chat that with those victories, he's now going to rank 2, and asks the computer to find a new match, saying it would be perfect if it found Anatole. The computer says it found the next match and is summoning the opponent. Then we see Anatole drop in with his lancer while the chat says he talked too much, and the man showed up. Then sometime later we see Anatole saying it's not possible that you prepared so much for this. Our hero says thank God because he had been waiting for this for a long time and he will finally get to face him. Anatole says he was also waiting for him but thinks he is not mentally prepared to face the boy right now. He thinks that just being face to face with him gives him chills down his spine and butterflies in his stomach, and he wonders if he can really defeat that guy with his current level. Our hero says that the armor he's wearing is awesome, and he says it's made exclusively for him. Then he says you get one of those when you win a world championship, and thinks about how many skins like that he has. He says you must have 10. And with the Lancer alone, he has 3 different ones, each representing a world championship he won. Then he asked himself why he is doubting himself and his abilities against his opponent, and right after wonders what he is doing. He asked himself what the chances of winning are, and then says that none of that matters, and we see there are 33,000 people watching that fight. Happy and smiling, he says all those people came there to see him fight and that he only fights the way he does because of them. Our hero asks Anatole if he knows that if he defeats him, he becomes number 1 in ulti fight. Anatole charges our hero saying that it won't be easy because after all, the path to rank 1 is blocked by him, and our hero, blocking his attack and smiling, says that something like that won't stop him. Suddenly, we see the clash of the 2 weapons and a bright light being emitted from Anatole's weapon. Our hero notices there's something different there, that he's thrown far away by the Lancer's drill attack, who spins the lance quickly, creating a rebound effect. Our boy then falls at a certain distance, grating his teeth and thinking that he used that attack to keep his distance. Anatole quickly uses another move called Spear Bombardment, causing a series of rapid attacks to strike our hero. The chat tells him to be careful with that, and he tells the chat back that it's okay. They shouldn't worry. He says that attack is exactly like the blooming sword of the girl who uses a sword and the ghost sword strike too. Then he thinks that no matter how fierce the storm is, it will never shatter a solid rock all at once. Our hero shouts that he will show the power of the heavy sword that breaks illusions while thinking that he will use the technique that defeated an entire legion of aliens at once. Surrounded by flames, he uses his heavy sword ability. Anatole then, seeing the attack coming toward him, says that this is impossible. We see an intense red light in the shape of a cross, breaking everything it touches, while the chat wonders if that's allowed by the game and if our hero didn't break something. Our hero stands still after executing the move while the chat talks and wonders if that character can really do that. Smiling and reading the chat, he says yes. He tried to imitate Wolfink's ultimate with a sword. He says that at least that match was really cool, while the chat says what was cool was hearing Anatole's screams. Then he comes back saying for the boy to stop talking because he was starting to prepare a counterattack. Our hero tells the chat to stop messing with him because normally people wouldn't even think of counterattacking in a pressure situation like that. He says that at least Anatole managed to move a little in the fight and in the end says he has talent. The crowd goes wild with our hero's phrase and starts mocking Anatole crazily. Since he saw the man froze in a statue pose, he says he's not mocking him, that it's really a compliment. The system starts restoring the arena that was completely destroyed by our boy's attack while he says that in that spirit, let the fight continue. Someone in the chat said he became a punching bag, but Anatole tells them to shut up and accepts his second match. While he says that this time he won't lose so easily, we see a huge explosion happening in the distance. Then Anatole falls backward back into his lobby, while the chat says it was excellent work getting beaten so brutally by Dohyuk. Then he looks up and says he's really good at that game. The chat confirms he got ranked 1 and even put up a 15-win lead, and they wonder why Anatole is at rank 8 now. They keep saying that out of Dohyuk's last 15 victories, 10 were against Anatole, who defends himself by saying that in the last match, he landed 3 hits. Then a piece of news catches the boy's attention saying that our hero is now aiming at the game Iron Fist, wanting to become rank 1 there too. The chap then asks Anatole what he thinks about that and where he thinks the boy will end up in Iron Fist. He thinks that if someone had asked him that yesterday, he would have said the boy would do well. But now, after fighting him, he doesn't know what the boy's power limit is. As much as he's shown talent for the game in Ulti Fight, Iron Fist is a game full of monsters like him. He thinks a good example is Quabnum, the crazy talent from North Africa who conquered the game's world arenas in the same year he started. But now seeing that monstrous presence he felt when the boy fought him, even if it were in that game or any other popular game. Then smiling, he tells his stream that he'd like to see how far the boy will go on his own. In another moment, our hero starts his stream, and the chat seems surprised to see him and asks if he'll play Valhalla again today. Our boy says maybe he'll play it in the second part of the stream that day or take a full break. The chat then starts getting excited when they ask if he could play that game, and he says yes. Now that he's reached rank 1 in Ultifight, the next will be the last fighting game released, Iron Fist. He will play and give it a shot. He tells the computer to start the game by setting his nickname first. The computer tells him there are already 1,773 people with that same nickname. The chat goes wild saying there are already a lot of people trying to copy him. Then he says there's no way around it. There's no avoiding that kind of thing, and then tells the computer to continue like that anyway. The computer finally starts running the new game. The connection to Iron Fist is successfully completed, and we see our hero with an aura of energy around him. He then finds himself finally inside the game. The system shows a window asking him to choose the game mode, and we see 3 options: offline, story mode, and online. He notices there's a story mode and says Ulti-Fight didn't have that, and his chat asks if he'll follow that mode. The chat asks him if he'll follow that mode, and he asks what that is when the chat explains it's a secret mode inside story mode. Neither Anatole nor Beyond manage to get through that mode, and our hero says to leave story mode on hold for now, that he'll play online mode like an Ulti-Fight. The computer says he's selected online mode and starts looking for his first opponent. A tower of red light shines in front of him when the first opponent is selected. The next day, the news spreads saying that our hero was playing Iron Fist and had already secured 10 consecutive victories. Then we see a boy sitting at his computer asking why they're acting that way. The boy is Akuma, a professional Iron Fist player from Team VSS, who says that even the best Ulti-Fight players struggle in this game and that they're making a big fuss. Suddenly, Beyond shows up behind him and says that in this case it really is a big deal. The boy argues that being really good at one game, there's always a learning curve when switching to another, and in this case, the games are quite different. But people are reacting to him as if being good at riding a bike meant the same as piloting a tank, and Beyond asks if he's being skeptical. He says he was skeptical about that boy too at first. Then he gives his friend a friendly whack and says he'll understand when he meets him and that he should practice a lot for when that happens. Beyond says he'll play the full immersion game first and tells him to join when he's ready. The boy then refuses to believe that our hero has talent as great as Beyond, Anatole, and himself. So he thinks he'll make our hero understand that Iron Fist is a completely different game from Ulti-Fight. We see a sword breaking in a scream of pain. Then we see our boy celebrating another victory, saying that with that win, he completes 18 matches in a row without a single defeat. Then he wonders if he's really winning the matches so easily and if he's not making them bored. Looking at his computer, he says he hopes to match with someone who really plays well this time. The game, almost as if hearing him, matches him with an opponent who has a 100% win rate just like him. Our hero wonders if Celestial is the rank just below and Head later, which would be the top. The chat says they'd never heard of that guy, and it must be an alternate account of some other professional player. The man then thinks that Amuka is the opposite of Akuma, and that it's his alternate account, the professional player. If he beats the boy, he'll give him the stigma of having lost to Akuma's alternate account, and he'll still get the title of being the first to defeat the boy in that game. Then he gets into attack stance and calls him to fight, while the chat says that if he's going to start playing Iron Fist, he has to learn the style of the God of Thunder. Our hero asks what the chat means by that, and they explain that in that game, the best players are the ones who master the style of the God of Thunder. People ask if he's really going to have a round against that person, and he wonders why not. Then he says that to absorb Amuka's techniques, he also has to learn that. So he says he'll go with that Demon King skin, and he'll learn the style of the God of Thunder while he's there. Amuka starts trembling and wonders if the boy is messing with him. Our hero says, of course, he's not joking, that he has a lot to learn from Amuka and calls him teacher. Amuka then says that he's really mocking him, and our boy, laughing, says he's very perceptive for noticing that. Then he says that's how he lures his opponent into carelessness and right after punches him. Amuka quickly dodges using an absurdly high speed. He then takes advantage and quickly moves behind our boy. Our hero notices and says that he really is very fast. Then he tries again to land another blow on Amuka, who is very fast and goes behind him again.